Never let them know you can see. Never let them know you can see. In a daze, Fang Xiu opened his sleepy eyes. On the white ceiling above him, dense blood-red text pierced his vision. His eyes were dull, his pupils slightly unfocused, and his face carried the dazed look of someone just waking up. But the next moment, his pupils suddenly contracted, and he leaped out of bed with a start, like a frightened bird. He sat up straight. This is... Fang Xiu looked up, horrified and bewildered, at the blood-red text all over the ceiling. The crimson characters were densely packed, sprawling across the ceiling, twisted and crooked, like wriggling tadpoles, creating an eerie and grotesque atmosphere. His mind was completely blank. He couldn't understand why, after peacefully sleeping at home, he woke up to find his bedroom ceiling covered in writing, as if someone had bitten their finger and written it little by little. What's going on? Who wrote on my ceiling? Never, never, let them know you can see. Fang Xiu instinctively read the blood-red text aloud. But the next second, the text on the ceiling suddenly vanished, disappearing abruptly, as if it had never existed. Fang Xiu rubbed his eyes in disbelief and looked up again. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see any of the blood-red characters. All that remained was a pristine white ceiling. How is this possible? Was I dreaming? Did I drink too much? Am I hallucinating? Fang Xiu started questioning his eyes. But the writing just now was so clear, so real. Such a bizarre event made Fang Xiu feel a bit uneasy, and his heart began to race. Whether it was a hallucination or reality, Fang Xiu just wanted to leave the bedroom and get some fresh air. However, just as he was about to get out of bed, his eyes involuntarily glanced around, and he froze, as if struck by lightning. This isn't my bedroom. What's going on? Am I still dreaming? Fang Xiu stared incredulously at the unfamiliar room in front of him. The desk, the computer, the wardrobe, the bed, everything felt so strange. He was certain this was not his bedroom. Where is this? Fang Xiu hadn't drunk any alcohol the night before, nor had he gone to the wrong house. After working overtime, he clearly remembered returning home, eating a cup of instant noodles, watching a movie, and then falling asleep exhausted. But now, the cup of noodles that had been on his nightstand was gone, and the 2 used tissues he had thrown on the floor were missing as well. Everything was too clean, too strange. What's going on? Fang Xiu muttered in disbelief. Just then, a chaotic and unfamiliar memory surged into his mind, making him momentarily lose focus. After a moment, Fang Xiu regained his senses and stared blankly at his palm. Did I travel through time? Did I travel to a parallel world similar to my previous life? Fang Xiu's thoughts were racing. The strange memories he had just experienced were those of the body's original owner. They were overwhelming and disordered, and he couldn't process them all at once. After all, it was 20 years of life experience, and he couldn't absorb it all in such a short time. He could only focus on the most important memories. The original owner of this body was also named Fang Xiu, similar in age and appearance to the one who had crossed over, with a plain look similar to that of Gu Tianle. The only difference was their life paths and the background of their worlds. The traveling Fang Xiu had been helped by kind-hearted people and worked hard, allowing him to attend a top university, where he was currently studying. But here, this Fang Xiu wasn't so lucky. He had to drop out of high school due to a lack of money and had been forced to work. Now, he worked as a salesman in a real estate office. The world was similar to his previous life, but many historical events and people had already changed or disappeared. But even if I have traveled through time, what was up with that blood-red text? There's nothing like that in the original owner's memories. The eerie blood-red text made Fang Xiu uneasy, and he searched his mind for any relevant information, but found none. At that moment, suddenly, a gentle female voice came from outside the bedroom. "Hubby, breakfast is ready." Fang Xiu was startled by the unexpected voice. He froze for a moment. Hubby. Had he gotten married so early in this parallel world? Or was she just his girlfriend? After all, such terms of endearment were common between couples. He hurriedly tried to recall his memories of his wife, but his thoughts were interrupted the next second, as a figure in a white silk camisole nightgown entered his view. Seeing his wife for the first time, Fang Xiu's eyes instinctively widened, and he was momentarily lost for words. Having watched plenty of videos with beautiful women, Fang Xiu thought he had a high tolerance for beauty, but when he saw his wife, his first reaction was not just surprise, but awe. The woman before him was overwhelmingly beautiful. She wore a white silk camisole nightgown, soft and form-fitting, outlining her perfect and tantalizing curves. The nightgown was short, barely covering her curves, and her long, pale legs were exposed, glimmering with a cold white sheen, like the most precious jade. Her skin was not just white, but a cool, almost bluish white, with a hint of pink, a so-called cool white skin tone. Her delicate, slender shoulders were only supported by two thin white straps. Her swan-like neck and exquisitely beautiful collarbones were fully exposed. With such a flawless and exquisite figure, even with an average face, she would still be considered a beauty. But her face was more than just average. If Fang Xiu were to rate her, he'd give her a 99 out of 100, withholding 1 point to avoid making her too proud. Her face was a perfect embodiment of feminine warmth and grace. Her autumn water-like eyes gazed at Fang Xiu tenderly, her face wearing a gentle smile that seemed to heal all the wounds in his heart. In an instant, Fang Xiu felt as though he had fallen into an ice pit. Can you see me? What does this mean? His mind went into chaos as he tried to make sense of the situation. However, his wife gave him no chance to think. Crack. The sound of breaking porcelain echoed through the room. His wife's smooth, pale skin began to crack open, spreading rapidly across her body like a shattered porcelain doll. Black, spiderweb-like fissures covered her, and from the cracks, blood oozed out, wriggling like worms. Her once beautiful long hair began to stir, twisting in the air like black snakes. You can see me. Her voice, distorted and inhuman, echoed. Her mouth stretched wide to her ears, revealing jagged teeth, and inside her throat, another mouth seemed to have grown, like an extra jaw. Fear swept over Fang Xiu like a tidal wave, freezing his body, his mind going blank. Then, the shadow of death approached. A massive, blood-filled mouth descended toward Fang Xiu's head. Everything went dark, cold, slick, and suffocating as his head was swallowed. The unimaginable pain surged through his entire body. Fang Xiu was dead. The scene was chilling. An inhuman entity had bitten off Fang Xiu's head. His headless body did not immediately collapse. Blood burst from his neck like a fountain, soaking the bed. But then, the surrounding time and space shattered like glass, and everything returned to nothingness. Never let them know you can see. Never let them know you can see. On the white ceiling, the blood-written words seemed to have been written with a bitten finger. Fang Xiu awoke with a start, sitting up in bed, gasping for air. Sweat poured from his forehead, and his eyes were filled with fear. What happened? Didn't I just die? Was that a dream? This was Fang Xiu's first thought. But when he saw the blood-written words on the ceiling, his body froze. Never let them know you can see. Damn it. Wasn't that a dream? Fang Xiu stared at the words, and as he did, they suddenly vanished, as if wiped away. Disappeared again. What the hell is going on? Before Fang Xiu could process his thoughts, a gentle woman's voice came from outside the bedroom. Darling, it's time for breakfast. The voice was so tender, filled with affection, evoking endless imagination. But for Fang Xiu, it brought only fear, endless fear. The terror of having his head bitten off returned. He instinctively wanted to run, but couldn't. Because his wife had already entered the room. She was still wearing the same white nightgown, her pale skin soft and tender, the smile of someone who had lived through many years of gentleness. Darling, you're awake. It's time for breakfast. She smiled softly. Fang Xiu was terrified. He was just an ordinary person, never having encountered anything so bizarre, never imagining his own head being bitten off by an inhuman entity. Why don't come any closer. Fang Xiu trembled, retreating on instinct, his back hitting the bed frame with a loud thud. It was loud, but he felt no pain, only the terror of staring at his wife. His wife's eyes flashed with an unsettling excitement, and her smile turned into a sinister grin. You can see me. Ah. The shadow of death once again enveloped Fang Xiu, and he became a headless corpse once more. Never let them know you can see. The blood-red words pierced Fang Xiu's eyes again, and he jerked awake, gasping for air. Calm down. Calm down. Think, what is going on? Fang Xiu slapped his face, forcing himself to stay calm. I died, and then I came back to life. Is this some kind of death loop like in a web novel or a movie? Have I fallen into a cycle? What the hell is that strange thing? His brain raced to make sense of it. But then, once again, the woman's gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. Darling, it's time for breakfast. His wife, with a soft smile, slowly walked into the bedroom. Cold. Trembling. Fang Xiu felt his body freeze, uncontrollable shivers running through him. He was just an ordinary person, someone who would get nauseous after riding a roller coaster, and swear never to do it again. But now, in such a short time, he had been killed 3 times, and he couldn't control the instinctive fear that overtook him. Help. Don't eat me. You can see me. His wife's face twisted with manic excitement. Fang Xiu was dead again. Fang Xiu woke up again. I'm alive again. Quick, think. Death rewind. Infinite loop. After each death, I return to the starting point. Like a save file in a game. How do I save myself? At that moment, the blood-red words disappeared again, catching Fang Xiu's attention. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. Never let them know you can see. Them, does that refer to my wife? Does this mean I can't let her know that I can see her? Darling, it's time for breakfast. Fang Xiu froze. Calm down. Calm down. Fang Xiu, you can do this. Ignore her. Ignore her. The next second, his wife slowly walked toward him. Fang Xiu kept his eyes straight ahead, staring at the wall, refusing to look at her. But sweat continued to pour down his face, and his body shook with fear. Darling, are you okay? Not feeling well? Fang Xiu jumped. Had her words changed? Ignoring her had worked. But before he could feel any relief, her beautiful face appeared inches from his. His wife had leaned over, tilted her head slightly, her face full of concern. Her stunning face was less than 10 centimeters from his. Fang Xiu's pupils constricted, and his gaze uncontrollably fell on her face. You can see me. His wife's white face began to crack, covered in a web of cracks. Damn it. Fang Xiu was filled with both fear and anger. He punched her face with all his might. He never imagined he would become the kind of man who would strike his wife, and he had always hated such behavior. But life was like this. Sometimes you end up becoming the very thing you despise. With that punch, Fang Xiu screamed in pain. His hand felt as though it had struck a wall, breaking his bones. But his wife remained unharmed. Her eyes gleamed with a crazy, greedy hunger. She didn't give him any time to react. She opened her blood-filled mouth and bit off his arm. Ah! A heart-wrenching scream filled the room. This time, Fang Xiu died horribly, far worse than the previous times. At least before, it had been a quick death. Now, he was eaten piece by piece. It's hard for anyone to imagine going through this, watching a strange entity devour you slowly, bit by bit, until death. When Fang Xiu woke up again, he had lost his sanity. The traumatic death he experienced last time left him unable to stay calm. Because it hurt too much. Ah! Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Fang Xiu cursed like a madman. Honey, it's time for breakfast. His wife entered with a smile. I'll eat your damn breakfast. I'll fucking kill you. You can see me. I can see you. Fang Xiu lunged at his wife, looking like a lamb charging at a tiger. Naturally, he died again, and this time, it was gruesome. The fourth time. After the experience of giving up, Fang Xiu calmed down. This time, he decided to keep his eyes closed. Since it's hard to ignore, just close your eyes. Perhaps because he had died so many times, he felt less afraid. There was a fearless sense of, I'll be fine after 18 years, inside him. Honey, it's time for breakfast. Fang Xiu ignored her and kept his eyes shut, pretending to still be asleep. Honey, are you still asleep? The sun is up. His wife's voice rang in his ear. Fang Xiu could easily imagine a beautiful, gentle woman in a white nightgown squatting beside his bed, staring at his side profile with a look of affection. She might even be holding her fair chin in one hand, tilting her head slightly, with a trace of helplessness on her exquisite face. Honey, are you eating breakfast or not? Fang Xiu remained unmoved. He was very clear that eating breakfast didn't mean for him to actually eat, but for him to be eaten. He had already made up his mind, he wouldn't get up no matter what. Every time he got up, he was bitten to death. He wasn't going to accept this good morning bite. His wife tried a few more times, but when Fang Xiu remained asleep, she stopped. Had she left? That damn bitch, couldn't she walk quietly? Fang Xiu dared not open his eyes. He decided to wait. The room was silent, so quiet that Fang Xiu could only hear his own breathing and heartbeat. He suddenly realized something. According to normal logic, if his wife wanted to wake him up, she should have nudged him, not just kept calling in his ear. Why didn't she make any physical contact? Could it be that she can't touch him unless he sees her? Why is that? Fang Xiu began to understand the meaning of the phrase, never let them know you can see them. In the rare quiet, Fang Xiu didn't waste time. He began to think. What exactly were they? Who wrote the blood-red words on the ceiling? Why did they disappear mysteriously after he saw them? Why could he die repeatedly and restart? there was too little information to make any conclusions. He tried to absorb the memories of the original owner of his body in the hope of finding some clues. An hour passed. This was the longest Fang Xiu had survived, and he had managed to organize the memories. He now had a rough idea of what this world was like. It wasn't much different from his previous life, it was still a modern urban setting, and people lived normal lives. The only difference was that this world seemed to have more strange and eerie stories. Although most of them were just rumors, the quantity was clearly off. Could it be, my wife is some kind of ghost? At that moment, Fang Xiu really wanted to open his eyes, not because he lacked patience, but because he was afraid of wetting the bed. Everyone knows you need to pee after waking up. As an adult, wetting the bed was a shameful thing, second only to pooping in the street. And with so much time passing without any sound, his wife might have already left. But, cautious as he was, Fang Xiu held it in for another hour. Unable to hold it any longer, he decided to get up. A living person couldn't die from holding in pee. Fang Xiu planned to open his eyes, but he still had reservations. As a frequent viewer of horror films, he was terrified that if he opened his eyes, a beautiful face would be right in front of him, staring at him. A face-to-face moment. This kind of scene often appeared in horror films. At this point, his bladder was at its limit. Fang Xiu carefully opened his eyes a crack, his vision blurred and blocked by his thick eyelashes. He could hardly see anything. But he could see whether there was anything in his line of sight. Nothing. It seemed there was nothing in front of him. All he saw through his eyelashes was the clean white ceiling. Fang Xiu breathed a sigh of relief. The first step was successful, the most terrifying scenario didn't happen. He slowly turned his head, wanting to see if his wife was still beside the bed. But he was surprised to find that she was not there. The bed was empty. His courage grew, and he slowly sat up, stretching lazily as if to cover up the sound, pretending to stretch his stiff neck and glancing around. The entire bedroom was empty. Great. She finally left. But he couldn't let his guard down. His wife could still be outside. If he went out now, he might run into her. Fang Xiu wasn't stupid. He didn't plan to leave the bedroom to pee. He'd seen countless horror films, and in every one, someone who knew there was a ghost would still go to the bathroom and die. He planned to solve the problem right there and then, peeing in the bedroom's trash can. Wet the bed was simply unacceptable, but peeing in the trash can was the limit. Just as he slowly stood up and his feet touched the floor, a voice like a nightmare rang from behind. "Honey, you're awake." Fang Xiu's scalp instantly felt like it was being pierced with electricity, sending a shiver down his spine. He reflexively turned around. What he saw nearly froze his blood, and his breath stopped. There, on the pillow where he had just lain, was a pale, beautiful face. The face was smiling gently, looking at the terrified Fang Xiu with tender eyes. It was his wife. But she seemed to have no physical form. She lay on the bed as though floating in water, only her face visible, the rest of her body hidden beneath the bed. Shit! Fang Xiu jumped in terror, nearly springing out of bed. He had been prepared for anything, afraid his wife might scare him, but he never expected her to break all the rules and be under him the whole time. When? Had she been under him the entire 2 hours he had been lying there? Had he been lying on top of her for 2 hours? The thought sent a wave of terror through Fang Xiu's entire body. You can see me. The 5th time. Fang Xiu had finally understood, avoiding and fearing it was pointless. He couldn't stay in bed with his eyes closed forever. To survive, he had no choice but to face his wife head-on, truly ignoring her. Otherwise, he would never leave the house. "Honey, breakfast is ready." Fang Xiu ignored her, lifelessly getting out of bed and walking toward the bedroom door. His wife was blocking the door. Fang Xiu didn't react, as though he hadn't seen her. He walked straight toward her. The expected collision never came. It was as though he passed through a gust of air, without any obstruction. He had guessed that his wife couldn't make contact with him unless she confirmed he could see her. Her earlier infiltration of the bed had proven this point. He soon managed to exit the bedroom. But his wife seemed determined not to let him go. Like a playful butterfly, she constantly fluttered in front of him. Then Fang Xiu died. He died from poor acting, from not overcoming his instinctive reactions. It was hard for anyone to not blink when a punch comes within a centimeter of their nose, no matter how composed they were. Instinct always wins. His wife was like this. The more he ignored her, the closer she got, even appearing ghost-like, so close that a small movement could lead to a kiss. At that moment, even a professional actor would be startled. The 6th time. Fang Xiu, expressionless, managed to leave the bedroom. He didn't rush out, fearing any abnormal actions would raise suspicion. Instead, he decided to go to the bathroom first. His wife seemed shy and didn't follow him to the bathroom. Just as Fang Xiu relaxed and began to relieve himself, a beautiful woman's head slowly emerged from the toilet. Fang Xiu died again. The 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th times. Fang Xiu was dead from despair, numbness, and collapse. He just couldn't do it. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't overcome his instinctive responses. His wife would appear suddenly, in every way imaginable, making his gaze waver. Once, she even appeared from his chest. Running away was impossible, as any strange behavior would trigger his wife's transformation. Repeated deaths caused Fang Xiu's nerves to snap. He fought back, he fled, he gave up, but nothing worked. It was as if it was his fate, destined to die by his wife's hand. The 11th, 12th, 13th. Honey, breakfast is ready. Hee, my wife is truly amazing. Fang Xiu went mad. His mental state had completely deteriorated, from rational and clear-headed to insane and chaotic. But his wife was no judge. She wouldn't spare him just because he had gone insane. The cycle of death continued. What happens when a person is driven mad by continuous stimulation, only to be faced with the same stimulus again? No one knows. The 18th time. Fang Xiu lay still in bed. If not for the barely detectable breathing and the instinctive beating of his heart, he would have seemed like a corpse. If anyone saw his eyes at that moment, they would be horrified to find they weren't the eyes of a living person. His eyes were full of death, like stagnant water, devoid of any human emotion. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul, but Fang Xiu's windows were sealed with cement. Yet, if someone could look through the thick cement, past those lifeless eyes, they would discover a terrifying madness hidden beneath the calm. A burning hatred that could ignite his blood. That intense hatred was blazing, directed at his wife, at the 18 deaths. Some people are alive but dead inside. Some people are insane, yet still completely aware. This was Fang Xiu's state now. The repeated deaths drove him to madness, but in the end, that burning hatred pulled his sanity back, almost as if the hatred for his wife reshaped his mind. Suddenly, Fang Xiu calmly sat up in bed, muttering to himself, "Die, die, die. You should die. As long as I'm alive, you must die." His voice was low and calm, with no hint of emotion. He spoke the most chilling words in the most peaceful tone. "Honey, breakfast is ready." His wife's gentle voice sounded right on cue. Fang Xiu pretended not to hear. He got up, put on his shoes, got out of bed, walked through her body, then went to the bathroom to wash up and change clothes. Throughout this, his wife continued to interfere, but Fang Xiu's expression never wavered, as though he truly couldn't see her. After dressing, he calmly sat at the table and ate breakfast. Of course, he had made it himself, a fried egg, a sausage, placed between slices of whole wheat bread, and a glass of milk, simple yet nutritious. It was clear, the more beautiful a woman, the more she lies. His wife was no exception. She had said breakfast was ready, but she had made none. After eating, Fang Xiu walked straight to the door. He was going to leave, to investigate his wife's secrets, to uncover the abnormalities in this world. Only then would he have a chance at revenge. Just as he placed his hand on the door handle, his wife's beautiful face appeared in the door, smiling gently. "Honey, don't go outside, stay at home and keep me company." Click. The door handle was twisted off, but Fang Xiu calmly walked out. Bang! The door slammed shut behind him. His wife didn't follow. After 18 deaths, Fang Xiu finally walked out of the house, but there was no joy in his survival. His mind was fixated on only one thing, revenge. Revenge, nothing but revenge. No one can kill me 18 times and get away with it. No one. Tap tap tap. Fang Xiu's footsteps echoed in the hallway. He lived on the 5th floor in an old building with no elevator, so he had to walk downstairs. Soon, he passed through the dim, dilapidated hallway, and the building's door came into view. He slowly pushed the door open, and bright, warm sunlight poured through the crack, filling the dark hallway as the door opened wider. It was as if the world outside the door was a warm, sunlit paradise, the sunlight bathing him, making him feel warm. After 18 deaths, he finally saw the sun outside. He stepped out, stepping into the sunlight. But then Fang Xiu froze, his blood nearly freezing in his veins. Surrounded by sunlight, he no longer felt any warmth. Staring blankly outside, he muttered unconsciously, "Is this hell?" On the streets and in the sky, countless grotesque and terrifying creatures stand in overwhelming numbers, stretching beyond the horizon. It seems as though this is an eerie world, and humans are the true anomaly. Dark figures with no facial features walk along the streets, their entire bodies shrouded in shadow. Headless giants, towering as tall as skyscrapers, move between buildings. Skinned, blood-soaked humans float in the air beneath massive, eyeless skulls, their necks connected to writhing, crimson tendrils. Other twisted and deformed creatures, like dandelions drifting in the wind, soar freely in all directions. But these anomalies pale in comparison to the ones above. At the apex of the sky, massive, pure white wings block out the sun, wings so pristine, they appear angelic. However, these wings are attached to a single, monstrous eye, bloodshot and surrounded by cysts, exuding an ominous red glow, suffused with an eerie, forbidden presence. In the distant sky, a bride in a red wedding dress stands. The gown is embroidered with a large, sheet symbol, and her slender hands are gracefully folded in front of her. At first glance, everything seems normal, but she has the head of a rabbit. Her fur is immaculate, white as snow, with blood-red eyes like two rubies, her face adorned with an unsettling, human-like smile. The strangeness of her appearance clashes with her delicate demeanor, as if she were a dignified and beautiful bride from ancient times. Alongside her, more grotesque and incomprehensible entities appear, a gray, slick, and bloated mass covered with countless eyes, each eye popping like bubbles before regenerating. A Buddha head, dark and solemn, but covered in grotesque cysts. Black fog, swirling with the faces of screaming people, and a massive, eerie clay deity, each one far more terrifying and forbidden than anything else. These beings, towering above, create a striking and incomprehensible image. They emit incomprehensible, foul, and twisted information that assaults Fang Xiu's soul, bombarding him with a flood of corrupted, maddening whispers. In the past, Fang Xiu would have collapsed upon seeing such things. But after dying 18 times, being devoured alive each time, if he still had a soul, it would have been warped beyond recognition by death, madness, and hatred. The creatures might be horrifying, but they no longer break his spirit. Instead, they feed into his growing madness. His mind, already on the brink of collapse, finds solace in this spiritual pollution, like a twisted form of baptism. Ha, ha ha. Fang Xiu suddenly bursts into laughter, his voice dark and twisted, as if forced out from his throat, sending chills down one's spine. He cannot stop laughing, driven mad by the bizarre sight. He tries to cover his mouth to hide the abnormality, but the laughter spills through his fingers. His head lowers, casting shadows over his pale face, but his eyes, burning with madness, cannot be hidden. Interesting. This world is truly fascinating. Ha ha ha. A sudden coughing fit interrupts his laughter, but with each cough, the laughter grows louder and more erratic, until he begins gagging. Uncle, are you okay? Are you sick? A little girl enters his field of vision. She is about 4 or 5 years old, with 2 braids and a lollipop in hand. Seeing her, Fang Xiu is not surprised. From his memories of this world, he knows everything appears normal on the surface, people live regular lives, go to school, work, get married, and have children. No one seems to be aware of the grotesque entities around. Thus, it's natural for a little girl to appear in the neighborhood. He tries to contain his laughter, making an effort to appear friendly. I'm fine, little sister, but you should call me Big Brother. He extends his hand, intending to ruffle her hair. He had once fantasized about having a cute daughter like her. However, the next thing the girl says freezes his hand in midair. You can see me. The innocent look vanishes from her face, replaced by the same suppressed, insane expression Fang Xiu's wife once had. A crazed joy. Fang Xiu is momentarily stunned, then bursts into uncontrollable laughter once more. Ha ha ha. This is too interesting. Tears form in his eyes as he laughs. Bang! He slams his hand down on her head, rubbing her hair roughly. But in the next moment, his hand is knocked away. The girl, now visibly expanding before his eyes, grows larger at an incredible speed. Her small body inflates like a balloon, blood and flesh pouring out from every orifice, until, in the blink of an eye, she transforms into a towering blood-soaked abomination, over 2 meters tall, her body a grotesque mass of exposed flesh and veins. Her braids have transformed into thick, black horns, and her lollipop has turned into a massive bone club, likely from some unknown creature. You can see me. The girl shrieks, her voice monstrous. Fang Xiu watches her, his eyes glowing even brighter with madness than the creature before him. Compared to how you looked before, I prefer you like this. Because, it will make killing you much less burdensome. The girl screams, raising the gigantic bone club over her head. The shadow it casts envelopes Fang Xiu like the darkness of death. Fang Xiu laughs maniacally. Now I finally understand why I laugh, because there are so many creatures like you, so many that I don't worry about running out of things to kill. Ha ha ha, you will all die. Boom. The bone club crashes down, and Fang Xiu is reduced to a pulp. Fang Xiu woke up again from his sleep, and the madness on his face had faded, replaced by a still, dead calm. He repeated his previous routine, dressing, washing up, using the bathroom, eating, and then leaving his house. Once again, he saw the sky full of strange creatures and the cute little girl sucking on a lollipop. Ignoring everything, he walked out of the neighborhood and onto the street. The street was bustling with people, cars flowing in all directions. Everyone was in a hurry, heading to work or school, completely oblivious to the strange creatures everywhere. Some even had strange, snake-like heads perched on their shoulders, yet they remained unaware, chatting and laughing with those around them. Sometimes, ignorance really is bliss. Fang Xiu grabbed a shared bike by the street, intending to take a leisurely ride and observe the strange creatures. To kill them, he first needed to understand them. Of course, observation didn't mean staring directly at them. Once detected, he would only die and rewind. He had to pretend to be casually walking around, casually observing. He wanted to see if the strange creatures were everywhere and if there was any source to them. Ding! A clear notification sound rang out. Fang Xiu stopped his bike and checked his phone. It was a message from the work group. Manager Wu Dehai had tagged him. Fang Xiu, what time is it, and you're still not at work? How many times have you been late this month? Do you still want your bonus this month? The questions came in quick succession, harsh and forceful, as if the boss were confronting him face to face. If this had been the old Fang Xiu, he would have already apologized in fear. But now, Fang Xiu couldn't be bothered with these mundane matters. In this hellish world, all he cared about was uncovering the truth and getting revenge. Going to work and living a stable life was a luxury. Imagine, having to pretend not to see the strange creatures around, being cautious at all times, and a slip-up could mean death. Living like this was already hard enough, let alone going to work. Just as he was about to close the group chat and ignore these trivial matters, he suddenly remembered the 3-digit balance in his bank account. To uncover the truth of this world, a few $100s is definitely not enough. I can't just keep riding this shared bike around. This city might be full of strange creatures, but other cities might not be. I might need to take high-speed trains or even flights, which all require money. I think I still have some commission that hasn't been paid. If I get that, it should be enough to sustain me for a while. With this thought, Fang Xiu decided to go to the company, quit, and get his commission. He had considered using his ability to rewind death to win the lottery, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. He didn't have that kind of luck. Also, unless absolutely necessary, he didn't want to die again. The feeling of dying was truly unpleasant, even though he had died many times already. Fang Xiu City was called Lviting City, and his company was in the Lviting City Development Zone, where there was a villa area called Bailu Academy. He worked as a salesperson at the sales office of Bailu Academy. Half a year ago, he had sold a villa, but his commission hadn't been paid. So Fang Xiu started composing a message in the work group. I'm quitting. I'll come by the sales office in the afternoon to settle my commission from the last sale. He sent the message without much courtesy, like a newcomer to society, easily offending people. But he didn't care. He was too lazy to deal with social formalities. He just wanted to be efficient and not waste time on these trivial matters. He wanted to quickly resolve this and get on with his own business. As soon as his message was sent, the group went into an uproar. Manager Wu went crazy tagging him. Fang Xiu, what do you mean by this? Didn't I tell you last time that the commission will be paid at the end of the year? If you quit now, you won't get a single cent of your commission. Fang Xiu glanced at the messages casually, didn't reply, and simply closed the group chat. Then, he rode his shared bike straight to Bailu Academy. His home was far from Bailu Academy. It took 2 hours by bus, but he wasn't in a rush. He intended to take his time and observe the city. He rode slowly, pretending to be casually wandering, but his mind was entirely focused on the strange creatures around him. As he rode farther, he began to encounter more and more types of strange creatures, strange and bizarre in appearance. Gradually, he noticed a pattern. These strange creatures could see humans, but humans couldn't see them. The strange creatures seemed to fall into 2 categories. One type was mindless, grotesque in appearance, roaring in madness or constantly attacking surrounding humans. However, they had no effect on the surrounding environment, as if they were invisible. The other type were humanoid, acting as your colleagues, classmates, or family, staying by your side, talking and chatting with you. Of course, humans couldn't see or hear them. It was clear that the wife was one of these humanoid strange creatures. The humanoid strange creatures had a peculiar trait, most of them resembled humans, some even looking exactly like humans. They seemed intent on integrating into human life, staying by your side even though humans couldn't see or hear them, like an outsider, yet they persistently accompanied you. This puzzled Fang Xiu. Why were these strange creatures so obsessed with role-playing? If they couldn't affect reality, why insist on staying by a human? Thinking back on his wife's behavior, Fang Xiu had a guess. These strange creatures were testing whether humans could see them. After all, once they were seen, they could attack. No, wait. Fang Xiu immediately dismissed his guess. Testing was only one aspect. Normally, after confirming that humans couldn't see them, strange creatures should move on to the next target for testing. That way, the process would be more efficient. But his wife didn't leave after failing. Not just the wife, but as Fang Xiu rode, he saw many humanoid strange creatures. They all clung to one person, even though that person couldn't hear them, they desperately spoke to them. Why was this happening? Suddenly, an eerie thought flashed in Fang Xiu's mind. They were trying to integrate into human life. Yes, it must be. Otherwise, why would the wife roleplay? If these strange creatures only wanted to test whether humans could see them, they could easily do so by terrifying a person, like suddenly appearing. They wouldn't need to roleplay. So the only possibility was that they were trying to integrate into human life. But why were they doing this? Fang Xiu reasoned backward from the results. The goal of these strange creatures was clear, to eat humans. So everything they did was in preparation for that. Could it be that integrating into human life helped them get closer to humans? The state of the strange creatures seemed to be illusory. When humans couldn't see them, they were like ghosts. Once both sides confirmed the ability to see each other, the strange creatures would become real. Why did they need to be seen? No. Maybe hearing them would work too. Fang Xiu could see and hear the strange creatures, while others couldn't either see or hear them. Seeing or hearing meant receiving information. Once the strange creatures were sure that humans could perceive them, they could interact. So the reason for integrating into human life was probably to ensure that humans would pick up on their existence, either by seeing or hearing them. Integrating into life would certainly accelerate this process. Otherwise, there would be no need for the strange creatures to go through all this trouble. At that moment, Fang Xiu suddenly realized that perhaps some people's hallucinations, hearing voices, or seeing things were not just illusions. Some people might unknowingly hear their name being called or hear someone speaking, only to find no one around. This could very well be a strange creature trying to integrate into their life. The more they integrated, the more signals humans might inadvertently pick up. As the signals increased, the chances of the strange creature revealing itself would also rise. So, whatever you do, never respond. As Fang Xiu was lost in thought, it was already noon. He casually entered a ramen shop, had a bowl of ramen, and continued on his journey. He wanted to observe more of the strange occurrences and uncover more truths. Soon, it was afternoon, and the sun was beginning to set. The dim sunlight cast over Greenvine City, as if the entire city was shrouded in a layer of gloom. The strange happenings within the city grew increasingly vague and sinister. Finally, Fang Xiu arrived near Bailu Academy. Bailu Academy was a luxurious villa area. Although it was located in a somewhat remote area with empty streets and no pedestrians, it could not hide the fact that its land was worth a fortune. The villas were designed to be luxurious and tranquil, ideal for hiding mistresses or operating underground clubs. Most people who could afford a house here were chauffeured in luxury cars, so the distance didn't matter to them. In fact, they valued the peace and quiet. Riding a shared bicycle along the peaceful tree-lined path, Fang Xiu saw the well-maintained greenery on both sides, trees providing shade and flowers trimmed into various intricate shapes. This was a road that the developers of Bailu Academy had spent a lot of money refurbishing, as it was the main road leading to the academy. Perhaps because it was in a secluded area, there weren't many strange occurrences, just a few scattered ones. Fang Xiu rode through the main road, suddenly stopping in his tracks to carefully examine the building ahead. A dark undercurrent surged beneath his calm gaze. Bailu Academy was gone. The once picturesque, neatly arranged, and luxurious villas had disappeared. In their place was a mental hospital. The hospital covered a vast area with several buildings connected by skybridges. The walls were dilapidated, with peeling paint in many places, as if the place had been abandoned for a long time. The overall atmosphere exuded a chilling, eerie feeling. The sign at the entrance was crooked and covered in dust, but the name could still be made out. Qingshan Mental Hospital. Fang Xiu observed the hospital impassively, fully aware that he hadn't taken a wrong turn. This was once Bailu Academy, not Qingshan Mental Hospital. Is this another strange occurrence? Unlike the living anomalies I've encountered before, now it's a mental hospital. Or perhaps this mental hospital was created by the anomaly. Fang Xiu felt an intense curiosity arise. This was the first time he had encountered such a scene, and his intuition told him that something hidden about the anomalies might be inside. He put his bike down and opened his phone. Earlier, he had turned his phone off because manager Wu Dehai had been constantly calling him, and he didn't want to deal with it. After checking, he saw that there were 13 missed calls from Wu Dehai and 3 from Zhao Hao. Zhao Hao was his colleague, and they had a close relationship. After thinking for a moment, Fang Xiu called Zhao Hao. Beep, beep, beep. After about 30 seconds, Zhao Hao's voice, breathing heavily and deliberately lowering his tone, came through the phone. Xiu Gu, why did you take so long to return my call? What's going on over there? Wu Dehai is furious and said he's going to fire you, leaving you without a penny. Zhao Hao's words came rapid fire, filled with concern and urgency. Fang Xiu fell silent. Is everyone okay? Even though Bailu Academy had turned into a mental hospital, it seemed like his colleagues were unaffected. Hallucinations? Or like the other strange occurrences, could this mental hospital also be an anomaly that only he could see? Xiu Gu, why aren't you saying anything? Did something happen? Zhao Hao's voice came through again. I'm fine. Fang Xiu's calm voice answered. Are you still at the office? Yes, we're all at the office. You didn't come in today, and that bastard Wu Dehai took out all his frustration on us, making us work overtime again. By the way, Xiu Gu, you. We'll talk later, Fang Xiu interrupted, hanging up the phone and turning it off again. He intended to investigate Qingshan Mental Hospital and didn't want any unnecessary distractions, like a phone call ringing at a critical moment. Fang Xiu walked directly toward the entrance of Qingshan Mental Hospital. The gate was dilapidated and eerie, and with the darkening sky, it looked like a giant, man-eating mouth, a truly terrifying sight. But this didn't evoke any fear in Fang Xiu. In fact, he seemed to have lost all sense of fear. Whenever he encountered anomalies, his first emotions were always anger, hatred, and even excitement. Fear never entered the picture. Step, step, step. The only sound in the silence was Fang Xiu's footsteps. But then, bang! Fang Xiu crashed into something in the air, his face stinging with pain. An air wall. He was standing at the entrance, but it felt as though an invisible wall was blocking his way. He reached out to touch it, and the cold, rough texture of the barrier was clear to him. This isn't an air wall. There's a real wall here, but it's invisible. Could it be that the mental hospital is off-limits? Fang Xiu, unconvinced, continued to feel around for an opening as though blind. Xiao Fang, what are you doing there? Is this some kind of new performance art? A teasing voice came from beside him. Fang Xiu's heart skipped a beat, but his face remained motionless. Having been killed multiple times by his wife, he had long mastered the ability to remain unflinching. In such an eerie mental hospital, someone suddenly calling him might very well be the prelude to something dangerous. He didn't react outwardly but continued his search, moving in the direction of the voice. When he got closer, he looked out of the corner of his eye and saw a young man standing ahead. The man, dressed in a security uniform, had a cigarette in his mouth and was grinning at Fang Xiu. Fang Xiu recognized him. It was the security guard from Bailu Academy. Unlike the security guards in other neighborhoods, the guards at Bailu Academy were young, as the place catered to an upscale crowd. When the area became less desirable, they might switch to older guards, but that was far off. Hallucination? Or is it another anomaly in disguise? Just as Fang Xiu was pondering this, the security guard walked over and slapped him on the shoulder. Xiao Fang, why aren't you responding? I saw you bumping into the wall from a distance, and then you started feeling around. Is this wall really that sexy? Fang Xiu felt the warmth on his shoulder and thought deeply. So it's possible to physically touch him? He wasn't an anomaly. Fang Xiu turned and asked, Zhao Gu, have you been here the whole time? The security guard, Zhao Gu, looked surprised and even waved his hand in front of Fang Xiu's face. Xiao Fang, do you need glasses? I've been standing straight in the pavilion. You couldn't see me. Pavilion? Fang Xiu was sure there was no pavilion at Qingshan Mental Hospital. He looked in the direction Zhao Gu had come from, and his eyes widened in shock. Right where there had been empty space before, a pavilion had appeared. This was a small pavilion he had passed by every day while working. He had even gone inside, where there was a small air conditioner that made it cool in summer. How could this be possible? Fang Xiu instinctively turned his head toward the entrance of the psychiatric hospital, only to be shocked to find that the hospital's gate was gone. In its place stood a wall. He took a few steps back and looked around. Where was the psychiatric hospital? All he saw was the luxurious Bai Lu Academy. Fang Xiu blinked in confusion. When he opened his eyes again, the psychiatric hospital had reappeared, and the security guard, Zhao Gu, had vanished. What was going on? He focused intently, his gaze fixed on the Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital. In the next moment, something strange happened. Bai Lu Academy began to slowly materialize, like a movie fade in, first as a ghostly image, then solidifying as its colors grew richer. What was bizarre was that Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital was still there. The two buildings seemed to overlap. Was it a temporal disruption? Or spatial overlap? Fang Xiu felt dizzy, seeing double images, with both the psychiatric hospital and Bai Lu Academy blending into one. He changed his position and reached out to touch the wall. His hand passed right through the psychiatric hospital's wall until it hit the wall of Bai Lu Academy. He quickly realized, this psychiatric hospital was likely an illusion, just like the strange occurrences he had encountered before. It could be seen, but only under certain conditions could it be touched. He was still at Bai Lu Academy. The psychiatric hospital seemed like a hologram, draping over the academy. With that, Fang Xiu lost interest in finding Wu Dehai. Instead, he was determined to uncover the secrets hidden within the psychiatric hospital. Why was this the only place with an eerie building, unlike the others with living anomalies? Hey, Xiao Fang, why are you silent and just walking off? He heard Zhao Ji's voice behind him, but Fang Xiu paid no attention, his focus entirely on the psychiatric hospital. He moved slowly because the two buildings overlapped so much that it was hard to tell which was real and which was illusory. It was easy to walk into a wall. For example, now, though Fang Xiu was near the greenery of Bai Lu Academy, he was facing a dilapidated hospital room wall. Without hesitation, he plunged into the hospital wall, as if diving into air, and entered the building. The scene in front of him shifted, revealing a corridor with long benches, and the walls stained with dried, black-red blood, resembling a scene from a horror film. It felt like stepping into a hospital from decades ago, dimly lit walls, and the floor was not the usual marble but a grayish-white concrete floor. Fang Xiu didn't take the conventional path but instead wandered through the walls, searching everywhere. It seemed as though some horrific event had occurred in the psychiatric hospital, with bloodstains and decayed pieces of flesh scattered about. He passed through the hall, the dining area, restrooms, and activity rooms, all were empty. Until he arrived at a particular ward and instinctively stopped. This ward was special. The main door was dark red, like someone had spilled a bucket of blood on it, which had dried into that color. From a distance, it looked like the gaping mouth of a demon, sending chills down his spine. The ward was labeled 104. Ward 104. Fang Xiu's curiosity got the better of him. He stepped forward and passed straight through the ward door, entering. Inside, the room was ordinary, with only a worn bed, and in the corner of the bed, a little girl in a patient's uniform was curled up. She buried her head between her knees, her hands wrapped around her legs, with a tattered floral rope around her pale wrist, her face unrecognizable. Fang Xiu didn't look directly at her, pretending not to notice, but his peripheral vision quietly observed. He wasn't naive enough to believe that there were living people in this eerie psychiatric hospital. Even if she looked human. The little girl seemed to sense his arrival and suddenly lifted her head. Fang Xiu's peripheral vision snapped shut, as the girl's face had no features. He continued walking forward, but the girl, with her featureless face, stared at him unblinkingly until he left Ward 104. After passing Ward 104, Fang Xiu saw many more wards, each with a number. He entered them one by one, encountering numerous eerie beings. Most were violent and bloodthirsty, immediately attacking upon seeing a living person. Fang Xiu didn't even blink, allowing them to attack. He estimated there were dozens of such wards. That meant there were at least dozens of these eerie beings trapped in the psychiatric hospital. This psychiatric hospital must be hiding a major secret, Fang Xiu muttered to himself. As he walked, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. He realized that the doors of wards 162, 169, and 177 were wide open, and the rooms were empty. Had the anomalies escaped? He continued deeper, but his path was blocked by a villa in the real world. Without a key, he had to take a detour. After a while, he found himself in a doctor's office within the psychiatric hospital. The room contained a desk, with a stethoscope and some patient files scattered about, all stained with blood. Fang Xiu walked over to the patient files, his pupils contracting when he saw a blood-covered document. On the exposed part of the report, a few lines of text were visible. It read, Subject 128. Blood stains cover the rest, anomaly conversion degree 21.64%, conversion failed. Conversion of anomalies. Could it be that anomalies were once human? The beings in those wards, were they all once people? Fang Xiu felt a wave of shock, eager to continue reading, but at that moment, everything around him was still illusory, like a hologram, and he couldn't pick up the documents to examine them. Damn it! The secrets were within reach, yet unreachable, and the frustration made him furious. Suddenly, thin black strands of hair appeared before his eyes. They hung down from the air, attached to something unknown. Naturally, Fang Xiu wasn't foolish enough to look up. He pretended to wander casually, then distanced himself, stealing glances from the corner of his eye. There, perched on the ceiling, was a female doctor in a white coat, her limbs unnaturally long like a spider's, glaring directly at him. Her face was deathly pale, with pitch-black eye sockets and sinister markings, her eyes just empty whites, devoid of pupils. Her hair, over a meter long, hung down from the ceiling, and she gripped a gleaming surgical knife in one hand. A doctor. Fang Xiu's mind stirred. Had she written those patient reports? Could she have once been human? Countless thoughts rushed through his mind, but no answers came. The anomalies never answered questions. Fang Xiu could only keep moving forward. Since the doctor's office held clues, there must be more within the psychiatric hospital. Including the director's office. That was the core of the psychiatric hospital, perhaps all the secrets lay within. He continued to search through the psychiatric hospital for the director's office. Soon, he pinpointed an office area. Based on the layout of a normal hospital, he deduced that the director's office should be within this section. When he approached this area, he realized that in the real world, the location corresponded to Bai Lu Academy's sales office. It was also the place where Fang Xiu worked. The interior of the sales office was lavishly decorated, with bright marble floors and huge crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. The walls were adorned with intricate designs. In the center of the hall was a large model of Bai Lu Academy, a detailed miniature of the campus. To the right, there was a reception area with redwood furniture, leather sofas, and a projection screen. As Fang Xiu entered, a few colleagues dressed in professional attire turned their attention to him. Upon recognizing him, their expressions varied, as they had seen his resignation notice in the workgroup chat. Fang Xiu ignored their gazes and walked casually through the hall, focusing on the mental hospital's office area. To him, nothing was more important than uncovering the strange secrets. Just then, a young man in a suit, ordinary in appearance, thin, and wearing heavy black-framed glasses, walked up briskly. It was Zhao Hao, who had called earlier. He lowered his voice, urgently saying, "Xiuji, why are you so late? Wu Dahuai is about to lose his mind, should we?" Before Zhao Hao could finish, Fang Xiu interrupted, "Stop talking, we'll discuss it later." Zhao Hao's Hao came from the phrase Ri Tian Hao, so Fang Xiu often called him Ri Tian as a joke. Now, he continued this habit. "Xiuji you." Zhao Hao began, but Fang Xiu had already walked past him, heading straight for the second floor of the sales office. The first floor of the mental hospital office area didn't have the director's office. Zhao Hao glanced at Fang Xiu's back and sighed heavily, quickly following him. He thought Fang Xiu was going to the second floor to ask Wu Dahuai for money, worried that things might spiral out of control. Fang Xiu entered the second floor, which was also the office area of the mental hospital. Although the staircases of the two buildings were different, the floor heights were similar. As soon as Fang Xiu reached the second floor, before he could start searching, an angry voice rushed toward him. "Fang Xiu! You still dare to come to work? You've been fired. Do you know that?" A middle-aged man in a black suit and white shirt, balding and overweight, hurried toward him, pointing his chubby finger and shouting angrily at Fang Xiu. The second floor was the office area of the sales office, and Wu Dahuai's shouting immediately caught the attention of several colleagues sitting at their computers. Most of them had expressions of schadenfreude, eager to see Fang Xiu and Wu Dahuai argue, or even fight. Wu Dahuai was usually very harsh with his subordinates, unpopular with everyone. Though they didn't dare directly confront him, they would love to see someone challenge him. However, the confrontation they imagined did not occur. Despite Wu Dahuai's anger, Fang Xiu didn't flinch. He didn't even bother to reply, simply grabbing Wu Dahuai by the shoulder and pushing him aside, walking straight ahead. Although Wu Dahuai was fat, it was mostly flab, and he hadn't expected Fang Xiu, who was usually submissive, to push him. He staggered, nearly falling but catching himself on a nearby computer desk. You dare push me? You're asking for it." Wu Dahuai steadied himself, his face turning red with anger and embarrassment. His peripheral vision caught the eyes of his colleagues, and his face turned even more crimson. Out of control. Completely out of control. Security. Where are the security guards? Wu Dahuai, wisely, didn't directly confront Fang Xiu. He knew he couldn't win, and as a superior, if he fought with a subordinate in public, his career would be over. Seething with rage, he cursed as he called for security. Fang Xiu paid him no mind, walking around a bit before heading for the third floor. The director's office wasn't on the second floor. Fang Xiu, you have guts. How dare you push me? You. Wu Dahuai's shouting was cut short as his face changed. What do you think you're doing? Who gave you permission to go up to the third floor? Come back. He then shouted at a few colleagues watching the scene, what are you doing? Go stop him. Reluctantly, the colleagues got up, but by then, Fang Xiu had already disappeared up the stairs. Seeing this, Wu Dahuai's face changed multiple times. He quickly called the colleagues back. Forget it, I'll go myself. He hurriedly lumbered toward the third floor. It seemed like Wu Dahuai was nervous, as though there were some unspeakable secret on the third floor. Fang Xiu entered the third floor and immediately focused on a door in front of him labeled Director's Office. He quickly walked toward it, while behind him, Wu Dahuai was already panting and catching up. In reality, Wu Dahuai had no idea Fang Xiu was heading to the director's office, he just saw him heading toward the last office at the end of the hallway, which caused his face to change dramatically. Fang Xiu, get back here. Click. The office door opened. Angry shouts from a man and a surprised gasp from a woman could be heard, followed by the sound of clothes rustling. Wu Dahuai's face turned pale instantly. It's over. It's all over. He hurriedly tore at his white shirt, ripping off 2 buttons, and frantically ran toward the office. He entered the room to find Fang Xiu standing motionless, staring ahead. In front of him was an extravagant desk, on which a notebook and papers had been thrown to the ground, replaced by a half-dressed man and woman. The man was thin, with sunken eyes, pale complexion, and his pants halfway down. The woman was stunning, with exquisite makeup and a professional skirt suit, though it had several large tears. Her high heels were nowhere to be found. Fang Xiu stared intently at the woman's long legs, more specifically at the parchment lying on the desk, which the woman was coincidentally lying on. Who the hell are you? Who let you in here? The man shouted angrily as he hurriedly dressed. The woman hid behind him, quickly trying to cover herself with her clothes. Fang Xiu recognized both of them. The man was Wang Zitong, the son of the developer of Bailu Academy, and the woman was Li Feifei, a top saleswoman at Bailu Academy, and the most beautiful among them. The sales team at Bailu Academy was built by the developer, so in a sense, Wang Zitong was Fang Xiu's superior. Wu Dahuai. Didn't I tell you, no one is allowed to go up to the third floor? Wang Zitong yelled at Wu Dahuai. Wang Xiao, please calm down, calm down. Fang Xiu seems to have gone crazy today. Not only did he hit me, but he also went straight up to the third floor without saying anything. I couldn't stop him. He looked at his torn shirt with a guilty and terrified expression. Wang Zitong saw Wu Dahuai sweating heavily, panting, his white shirt wrinkled and missing 2 buttons, and angrily cursed, you useless fool. He then turned his anger towards Fang Xiu. Fang Xiu, what the hell are you trying to do? Do you know who I am? Before Wang Zitong could finish his sentence, Fang Xiu pushed him to the ground, revealing the helpless and terrified Li Feifei behind him. Hey! You dare to push me? Wang Zitong immediately exploded in rage. Ah! Li Feifei screamed, frightened, thinking Fang Xiu was about to assault her. However, the next second, she felt a force hit her, and her slender body was pushed off the table. After shoving them aside, Fang Xiu's gaze fixed on the sheepskin paper on the dean's desk. Upon seeing it, his heart trembled violently. The paper read, the person favored by destiny, do you want to know the truth about this world? Do you want to know what the strange things are? You've made it this far, so you must be full of questions. Don't rush, my friend. I've left everything you seek at the Qing Mountain Mental Hospital, room 520, building C. There, you will find all the answers you need. Go, search for them. When you find the truth, it will also be the moment you make your choice. Follow your heart, and accept the gift of destiny. The letter was signed by a name, Zhou Qingfeng. Fang Xiu read the letter word by word, his mind sinking like cold water. As expected. The mental hospital hides a great secret. Zhou Qingfeng must be the dean of Qing Mountain Mental Hospital. Was this letter written for him, or for someone else? Did he already know Fang Xiu would come? Old questions remained unresolved, and new ones surged in. Room 520 in Building C. Perhaps all the answers are there. Fang Xiu turned and left. At that moment, Wang Zitong, now standing, blocked his path aggressively. Push me and then run. Today. Before Wang Zedong could finish, the light above them suddenly flickered with a sharp crack. It went out, plunging the entire room into darkness. Wang Zedong, who had been ready to strike, immediately lost his target. Damn! A power outage? Wu Dahai. Turn on the backup power. I'm telling you, don't you dare run. In the darkness, Fang Xiu ignored Wang Zedong's threat, his heart already in turmoil. Because, at the moment the power went out, the Qin Mountain Mental Hospital vanished. His vision was completely dark, but the hospital's disappearance was not due to the darkness. The power outage affected reality, not the mental hospital. The mental hospital had always been shrouded in dim light. Logically, even with a power outage in the real world, he should still be able to see the hospital. But now, the mental hospital had disappeared, as if it vanished along with the darkness. This sudden change filled Fang Xiu with a sense of foreboding. He quickly took out his phone and turned on the flashlight. But instead of seeing the mental hospital, all he could see was the office in reality, with no trace of the hospital. What was happening? Fang Xiu rushed out of the office and ran toward the second floor. He needed to see if the mental hospital had disappeared there as well. Seeing Fang Xiu run away, Wang Zedong cursed loudly and immediately chased after him. Wu Dahai, fearing Wang Zedong might make a misstep, followed him closely. The only remaining woman, Li Feifei, was too scared to stay alone in the dark, so she too rushed to the second floor. When they reached the second floor, Fang Xiu moved around, using his flashlight to search for signs of the mental hospital. Nothing. It was nowhere to be found. The mental hospital had disappeared, like a mirage, leaving no trace behind. The second floor employees remained calm, as it was just a power outage, and with so many people together, even the female employees weren't frightened. Except for a few employees who were screaming. Ah! My report. I didn't save it before the power went out. Why couldn't it have been earlier or later? Why now? If I have to redo it, I'll be working overtime all night. Laughter echoed in the background. Lucky I saved mine. Me too. At that moment, Wu Dahai's voice rang out through the darkness. Stop complaining, go check if the circuit breaker tripped. I'll go see what caused my report to disappear. The employee who had screamed volunteered to go, flashlight in hand, striding toward the darkness. Perhaps due to the numerous strange rumors circulating in this world, one of the employees joked, "Need me to go with you? Be careful of any strange things." The employee heading toward the power source sneered, "Strange things? If I think about the overtime I'll have to do, my resentment's bigger than any ghost. If I see one, I'll be the one calling it boss." He continued and gradually disappeared into the darkness. Laughter filled the office. "Wait, what's going on? My flashlight is so dim," a female employee suddenly said. Her coworker responded, "Maybe it's dust, wipe it off." "I did, it's still not working, this damn phone." "No, my flashlight's dim too." "Mine too." In the darkness, many employees with flashlights nodded in agreement. Fang Xiu's attention was caught by this scene. He looked over, and his pupils contracted. There, in the darkness, stood or sat the employees. Nearly everyone was holding a phone's flashlight, and logically, the light should be enough to illuminate the whole office. But now, the light seemed to be suppressed by the darkness, with the beam cutting off just half a meter in front of them. Moreover, strangely, the further the flashlight's light would normally weaken, but now there was a clear boundary between the light and dark, the light unable to penetrate even an inch, as if the darkness had severed it. In the darkness, something seemed to stir. It was eerie. Fang Xiu almost instinctively judged that this familiar feeling was unmistakable. At that moment, a horrifying scream echoed from the far end of the darkness. Ah! The voice sounded familiar. It was the employee who had gone to check the power. This scream startled everyone. "Zhang Bo, what's wrong? Did you get shocked? Zhang Bo, stop messing around." Bang! The sound of something heavy hitting the ground followed. Ah! Several female employees screamed. "Stop screaming. Xiao Zhao, go check it out." Wu Dahai hurriedly ordered. Xiao Zhao, who was named, hesitated but, pressured by Wu Dahai's earlier commands, reluctantly agreed. Xiao Zhao was the security guard Fang Xiu had met earlier, and due to his job nature, Wu Dahai immediately thought of him when danger arose. Xiao Zhao, with flashlight in hand, walked into the darkness. Time passed, and after about 5 minutes, Xiao Zhao still hadn't returned, and there was no sound from the darkness. "Xiao Zhao!" Wu Dahai shouted, but no reply came from the darkness. "Manager Wu, how about we call the police?" someone suggested. Wu Dehai looked grim and walked over to Wang Zitong's side to ask for his opinion. Young Master Wang, what do you think? At this moment, Wang Zitong's expression was strange. His earlier anger had disappeared, replaced by an unprecedented fear, unease, and restlessness, with a hint of eager anticipation. It seemed as though he was afraid of something, yet also waiting for something. Fang Xiu noticed Wang Zitong's expression and felt something was off. He must know something. Young Master Wang. Wu Dehai spoke again. Wang Zitong snapped out of his daze. What did you just say? Young Master Wang, I was asking if we should call the police. That scream we heard earlier was clearly strange. I'm worried something has happened. Oh, right, call the police quickly. Wang Zitong seemed to remember something and hurriedly began dialing his phone. However, after a busy tone, the call never connected. At that moment, other employees began to panic. I can't get through either. Mine's not working too. How is this possible? We can usually get through to emergency services even if there's no signal, but now nothing. My phone has no signal at all. This only added to the confusion. One employee, who often visited mysterious forums, trembled and said, could it be, we're in the Phantom Realm? The scene became even more chaotic, with everyone speaking at once. Wang Zitong's face fluctuated between dark and pale, and when the lack of a signal seemed to confirm something, he suddenly shouted, quiet. His authority immediately silenced the crowd. Everyone's eyes turned toward him. The dim light from his phone illuminated his face, half-shadowed, and paired with his bizarre expression, it was unsettling. He swallowed hard, trying to maintain composure. Now, everyone, stay quiet. What I'm about to say is important. It will determine whether we survive or not. The words survive carried an unusual weight, as if they were a hammer striking everyone's hearts. Li Feifei, who stood beside him, was startled. Young Master Wang, what are you talking about? What survival? Don't scare me. Shut up. Wang Zitong snapped, causing Li Feifei's face to drain of color. He took a deep breath, his voice shaking slightly. If I'm not mistaken, we've probably entered the Phantom Realm. Young Master Wang, what is the Phantom Realm? Don't interrupt me. There's no time to explain. Listen to me and do as I say. Understood? Wang Zitong roared again, silencing the crowd. As someone of my status, I've encountered more than the average person, and the secrets of this world are beyond your imagination. To put it simply, there are such things as phantoms in this world, and the Phantom Realm is the domain of phantoms. Think of it as an alternate dimension, a world of phantoms, their territory. What we need to do now is escape this damn Phantom Realm, or else everyone will be killed by the phantoms. His words sent chills down everyone's spines. Phantoms. At first, everyone thought Wang Zitong was joking, but looking at his terrified and grim expression, they began to doubt that was the case. You're not joking, right? There are no such things as phantoms in this world, right? Didn't I tell you not to interrupt me? Damn it. If I weren't a spirit master, I wouldn't need to rely on you people to survive. Do you think I want to tell you these secrets? Wang Zitong's voice grew more frantic, as if a knife was at his throat. Whether you believe me or not, listen up. We've definitely entered the Phantom Realm. The lack of signal, the suppressed light, it's all proof. The only ones who can deal with phantoms are spirit masters, people who control their own spiritual power. My cousin is a spirit master. Everything I'm saying, he told me. Ordinary people who want to survive in the face of phantoms must first observe the killing patterns of the phantoms and avoid them as much as possible. So from now on, everyone listen to me. No one is allowed to act alone, even if you need to go to the bathroom, do it right where you are. Wang Zitong's words made some people doubt him even more. After all, it was challenging everything they had believed in for decades. Until they saw the phantoms with their own eyes, most people would still hold on to a sense of hope. Perhaps the only one who completely believed Wang Zitong was Fang Xiu. Because his wife was a phantom. However, Fang Xiu was puzzled. Wang Zitong might know about the existence of phantoms, but judging by his demeanor, he clearly wasn't someone who could see the phantoms everywhere, like Fang Xiu could. If Wang Zitong could see phantoms everywhere, he wouldn't be acting this frantic. Although Wang Zitong was performing admirably for an ordinary person, it was still far from enough. He couldn't remain unshaken in the face of danger, and it was impossible for him to survive in a world full of phantoms. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the spirit masters. When Fang Xiu heard that only spirit masters could deal with phantoms, a fiery hatred flared up within him. Perhaps, spirit masters could see the phantoms and had the power to fight back. Young Master Wang, what do we do now? Should we run? Wu Dehai asked, his voice trembling. We can't run. Wang Zidong shouted, as if something had triggered him. Stay put, don't move. Running around in the Phantom Realm is the same as looking for death. My cousin told me that in the Phantom Realm, never run around, don't touch anything, and avoid breaking any taboos. So, what do we do now? Observe. Everyone look carefully around you, see if there's anything abnormal. The phantoms haven't attacked us yet, so that means we haven't triggered their killing pattern. Following Wang Zidong's instructions, everyone began scanning their surroundings. 3 minutes passed, but no one saw anything out of the ordinary. There was no danger either. This made the crowd even more restless, and doubts about Wang Zidong's words grew. Some began to whisper, suggesting it might be a magnetic field anomaly or some unknown scientific phenomenon causing the weak light, the lack of signal, and the power outage. As for the 2 missing colleagues, maybe they were electrocuted when the power was restored. Should we go out and check? I need to use the bathroom. Yeah, who believes in phantoms? The murmurs reached Wang Zidong's ears, further increasing his anxiety. Though he cursed inwardly, he had to keep the others calm. Because, like the others, he was just an ordinary person. His spirit master cousin had once said that to understand the killing pattern of phantoms, the best method was to use human lives as tests. That was why he had shared these secrets with everyone, to keep them close so he could better test the phantoms' killing patterns and ensure his own survival. Everyone, quiet down. I told you, don't move around. If you need the bathroom, do it right here. Before Wang Zidong could finish, a calm voice cut him off. The phantom has appeared. The calm tone seemed to carry a certain power, and the words shook everyone. The room fell dead silent. What? Where's the anomaly? The group panicked and started looking around, but saw nothing. Fang Xiu, what are you talking about? There's no anomaly here. A colleague, who was quite frightened, glared at Fang Xiu. Yeah, what's the time, and you're still trying to scare us? Fang Xiu remained calm, his handsome and fair face looking even more delicate in the darkness. His emotionless expression gave him an eerie, lifelike doll appearance. Everyone felt uneasy under his dead-still gaze. Even the voices accusing him gradually faded. Suddenly, Fang Xiu spoke. Wang Xiaoli is missing. Wang Xiaoli. Nonsense, Wang Xiaoli is right beside me. Wang Xiaoli, speak up, one colleague quickly called out. But there was no response from Wang Xiaoli. The colleague's heart sank, and he hurriedly shone his phone's light, only to discover that Wang Xiaoli, who had been by his side moments ago, was truly gone. Wang Xiaoli. Wang Xiaoli. He called twice, but received no answer. The crowd erupted in panic. Wang Xiaoli is really gone. Could it be that the anomaly has appeared? Fang Xiu, what did the anomaly look like? Wang Zidong suddenly asked. Although Wang Zidong had a conflict with Fang Xiu, he wasn't about to get into a fight in a life-and-death situation. Fang Xiu calmly replied, the darkness obstructs vision. I didn't see the anomaly, just that Wang Xiaoli disappeared. His calmness made it seem as if a person had not vanished, but rather an insignificant ant. Normally, anyone witnessing such an eerie event wouldn't just remain calm, they would at least be visibly shaken. But Fang Xiu spoke without a hint of emotion, detailing Wang Xiaoli's disappearance as if it were a trivial matter. The people present weren't fools. Having worked in the professional world for years, they could read the room. It was clear to them that Fang Xiu's calmness was abnormal. Wang Zidong suddenly looked suspicious. Fang Xiu, you don't seem afraid of the anomaly at all. Are you a spirit master? Fang Xiu shook his head and asked, what is a spirit master? Wang Zidong's confusion deepened. A spirit master is someone who controls their own spiritual energy. I don't know much about it, but my cousin says that everyone's mind hides a great power, but it's covered in dust, like a luminous pearl with dust all over it. A spirit master is someone who wipes away the dust and allows the mind to shine with spiritual brilliance. Wang Zidong was about to continue explaining, but Wu Dehai interrupted him. Wang, are you for real? Look at the situation, people are disappearing, and you're still giving a lecture. We need to figure out how to escape. Shut up. Wang Zidong snapped. Escape? How do we escape? Where can we go? 3 people have already disappeared, and if we move recklessly, we might trigger the anomaly's curse and all die. Besides, the things I'm talking about are critical to our survival. Do you think spirit masters just appear out of nowhere? They are not born this way, they become spirit masters through experience. The best way to resolve this situation is for someone to become a spirit master. So, you're saying spirit masters are created in the anomaly zone? Fang Xiu asked suddenly. Wang Zidong nodded, somewhat surprised by Fang Xiu's sharpness. That's right. To become a spirit master, you must tap into the anomaly's power. I've mentioned before that everyone's mind is covered in dust. To clear it, you need two conditions. First, you must experience extreme terror, like between life and death. Only after surviving such a trial can the dust on your mind loosen, or a great shock to your mind could work as well. Second, you need to come into contact with the anomaly. By doing so, the anomaly's power will invade your mind. It's like wiping away dust with a cloth. But there's one thing to be careful about: while the anomaly's power can wipe away the dust on your mind, it comes with a contaminating force. It's like cleaning a luminous pearl with a bloody cloth. While it removes the dust, the pearl inevitably gets stained. The so-called spiritual brilliance is actually the result of the anomaly twisting the mind's natural glow. After listening, Fang Xiu formed a plan in his mind. This was a subjective world, and a spirit master's power was the result of the fusion of the mind and the anomaly. The life and death experience acted as a catalyst, much like the heat required for certain chemical reactions. Fang Xiu wondered why, even though he had met both conditions, surviving life or death situations and contacting the anomaly, he hadn't yet awakened his spirituality. Was it that he had already awakened it, but didn't notice? Wang Zitong continued explaining. So, everyone here has the chance to become a spirit master. If someone succeeds, we may have a chance to escape the anomaly zone. How can we tell when our spirituality is awakened? Fang Xiu asked again. First, your physical condition surpasses that of an ordinary person. Your senses become incredibly sharp, and after awakening, you will gain a unique ability, a reflection of your own mind. There will never be two people with the same ability. Ability? Reflection of the mind. Fang Xiu immediately thought of his own ability, Death Rewind. Could this be his power? No, that didn't fit. His physical condition and senses hadn't been enhanced in any way. He also had a vague intuition that the ability to rewind death had been a gift he received when crossing over, not something that came from awakening spirituality. It seemed clear that he hadn't awakened his spirituality yet. The real question was, why hadn't he become a spirit master despite fulfilling the conditions? Then it occurred to Fang Xiu that there was one condition he hadn't yet met: contact with the anomaly. Each time he interacted with his wife, he died, and this time, he had survived. That meant he hadn't truly made contact. He also realized that the anomalies surrounding him didn't count as contact. If you couldn't see them, they didn't truly exist for humans. This situation was different. Whatever was lurking in the dark seemed to have crossed into reality, killing without needing to be seen. The disappearances at the mental hospital, the anomalies that killed without being seen, and the spirit masters, all these pieces were starting to connect in Fang Xiu's mind. There was a link between them, but he hadn't figured it out yet. Although he was in danger, for the first time, Fang Xiu felt a sense of excitement. Because he saw hope for revenge, becoming a spirit master. Suddenly, Fang Xiu caught movement from the corner of his eye. Someone else has disappeared. What? The ghost reappeared. Who disappeared? The crowd fell into panic, searching around. Shortly after, someone cried out, "Jiao Yang is gone. Jiao Yang. Jiao Yang." Several colleagues who were close to him immediately began calling out. Stop shouting. Are you trying to summon the ghost? Wang Zitong yelled, his remaining sanity about to crack after the repeated disappearances. He had remained calmer than others because he had experienced these strange powers through his cousin and had been somewhat prepared. Additionally, he greatly admired his cousin and aspired to become a spirit master. That's why he entered the ghost domain, a mix of fear and an undercurrent of excited anticipation driving him. However, when faced with a real dragon after admiring one from afar, the first emotion that arises is often fear. Wang Xiao, what should we do? I don't want to disappear. Li Feifei, with teary eyes, grabbed Wang Zitong's sleeve, which made him grow increasingly annoyed. You think I know what to do? Who should I ask? At that moment, a calm voice cut through the chaos. It was Fang Xiu. 2 to 3 minutes. 2 to 3 minutes for what? The interval between disappearances is 2 to 3 minutes, Fang Xiu explained coolly. To be more precise, it's 2 minutes for women and 3 for men. Just now, security guard Xiao Zhao disappeared after 3 minutes, then Wang Xiaoli disappeared, and 2 minutes later, Jiao Liang disappeared. It seems this ghost kills someone every 2 to 3 minutes. If the deduction is correct, someone will disappear 3 minutes after Jiao Liang. Is it killing by timing? Damn it. How the hell do we avoid this? Wang Zitong's eyes were bloodshot, his emotions barely under control. Fang Xiu didn't answer him but turned and walked into the darkness. The crowd immediately grew alarmed. His best friend, Zhao Hao, shouted without hesitation, "Xiu, what are you doing? Are you out of your mind? Without looking back, Fang Xiu responded, I'm looking for a way out. What, should I just sit here and wait for death? There are 8 of us left. If the ghost kills someone every 2 or 3 minutes, we'll all be dead in about 20 minutes. I'd rather take a chance. Fang Xiu. Stop right there. Wang Zidong suddenly shouted, didn't I just say that no one can move freely? Do you understand that? If you break a ghostly taboo, we'll all die because of you. You're just an ordinary person, do you even know what ghosts are? Fang Xiu stopped and suddenly turned around. His pale, expressionless face was like a lifeless corpse, devoid of any vitality. Wang Zidong froze, his breath catching in his throat. At that moment, a cold, emotionless voice came from Fang Xiu, say one more word, and I'll kill you before the ghost does. His voice, devoid of any emotion, sent a chill down Wang Zidong's spine. In that instant, Wang Zidong felt a strong sense of impending death surround him. Looking into Fang Xiu's calm eyes, Wang Zidong suddenly realized that Fang Xiu was serious. If he said one more word, he would die. As a rich heir, Wang Zidong had met all kinds of people, including murderers. But even the eyes of a killer didn't carry the same pressure as Fang Xiu's. Wang Zidong's realization was not wrong. The eyes of a killer were vastly different from the eyes of someone who had been killed 18 times. Seeing that Wang Zidong had gone silent, Fang Xiu turned and disappeared into the darkness. Zhao Hao hesitated for a moment, his face showing indecision. But after a deep breath, he gritted his teeth, looked at Fang Xiu's retreating back, and then glanced at the hesitating crowd. In the end, he followed. Wang Xiao, what should we do? Wu Dehai's voice trembled. Wang Zidong's face alternated between green and white. He hadn't dared to get angry when Fang Xiu was around, but now that Fang Xiu had left, his temper flared. What do we do? Let them go to their deaths. 2 fools who don't even know what a spirit master is dare not listen to my orders. But I don't think Fang Xiu is seeking death. Shouldn't we follow him to see what's going on? Wang Zidong's anger skyrocketed. Follow him, my ass. If I die, I'll be damned by the ghost. Before he could finish, a piercing scream cut him off. Ah! Someone's disappeared again. Wang Zidong immediately felt his stomach drop. Looking around, there were only 5 people left, including himself. He quickly changed his tone, quick. Follow them. Fang Xiu walked through the dark hallway with Zhao Hao trailing behind him. They walked for a long time, but the corridor seemed endless. Usually, they'd reach the stairs after just a few steps, but today the hallway felt like a bottomless pit. Xiu, this doesn't feel right. Why haven't we reached the stairs? Zhao Hao trembled, clutching Fang Xiu's back like a frightened bird. Xiu, quiet, Fang Xiu whispered, suddenly stopping in his tracks, his eyes fixed on the end of the corridor. At the end, a faint green glow appeared, resembling the glow of an exit sign in the dark. It was eerie and unsettling. The moment Fang Xiu saw the glow, his brow furrowed. That light, it was exactly like the one from Qing Shan Mental Hospital. An unbelievable suspicion formed in his mind. He hurriedly quickened his steps toward the light. When he stepped into the glow, he found himself in a narrow, cramped, and dilapidated corridor. The ceiling and walls were stained with grime and blood, and there were old benches every few meters. The place felt like a hospital corridor from decades ago, with dull, gray walls and a cement floor instead of the usual marble. This was Qing Shan Mental Hospital. Xiu, am I hallucinating? Where are we? Weren't we supposed to be at the company? This looks like something out of a horror movie. Zhao Hao's scared voice came from behind Fang Xiu. Fang Xiu's heart stirred. Zhao Hao could also see the mental hospital. Could it be? Fang Xiu reached out, his hand brushing the rough, cold walls. The feedback sent a chill down his spine. His pupils contracted sharply. Just as he suspected. He had entered the mental hospital. This time, it wasn't an illusion, it was real. Could the mental hospital, like the living ghosts, meet some condition to break into reality? Was this the so-called ghost domain? Fang Xiu's guess was that the mental hospital, previously like a hologram, had now overlapped with reality, with the sales office being swallowed and embedded within it. No wonder they couldn't see the hospital earlier. They were already inside it. That's fine, we're one step closer to the truth, Fang Xiu murmured to himself. He hadn't planned on leaving, instead, he wanted to explore Qing Shan Psychiatric Hospital. The two continued walking and soon found 2 large pools of blood down the corridor. The blood loss was alarming, and much of the surrounding walls were splattered with it. Among the blood were remnants of torn flesh and bone fragments, along with shredded uniforms from the sales office and security. The flesh and bone fragments resembled leftover food scraps, marked with bite and tear marks. Seeing the familiar clothing, Fang Xiu immediately knew that these were the colleagues who had gone to check the power supply, along with the security guards. Clearly, they had been consumed by the creature. At this moment, Fang Xiu understood why the creature reappeared 3 minutes after a man disappeared and 2 minutes after a woman. It turned out that the interval between the creature's appearances was based on the amount of meat consumed. The female colleagues at the sales office were all quite attractive, at least they had well-balanced features and slim figures, which was a requirement for the industry. As a result, their meat mass was much smaller compared to the male colleagues. The creature took about 3 minutes to consume a male colleague, and only about 2 minutes to consume a female. Xiu Gu. Did they all get eaten by the creature? Zhao Hao's face turned pale, and his body trembled. Fang Xiu didn't respond but instead closely examined the shredded clothing. The cuts were very clean, obviously made by some kind of sharp blade. Connecting this to the bizarre events he'd seen in the Qinshan Psychiatric Hospital, he immediately thought of the female doctor. The precision of the cuts likely pointed to a scalpel. Just then, they heard rapid footsteps approaching from behind. Turning around, they saw Wang Zitong and his group emerging from the dark corridor. Oh my god! What is this place? Wasn't this supposed to be the sales office? This looks like a hospital. Wang Zitong and the others exclaimed, their faces filled with panic and disbelief. Indeed, no one could have expected that what seemed like a sales office corridor had suddenly transformed into a hospital-like setting. Fang Xiu, Zhao Hao, did you two find anything? Did you see Xiao Zhao and Xiao Li? Manager Wu Dehan asked, his voice shaking. Xiao Zhao and Xiao Li. Zhao Hao pointed at the 2 pools of blood on the floor, trembling. Wang Zitong and the others followed his finger, and their pupils instantly contracted. Blood! So much blood! Li Feifei screamed uncontrollably. These are Xiao Zhao and Xiao Li's clothes. Wang Zitong's face grew darker, cold sweat dripping as he seemed to grasp some horrifying thought. They were eaten. The moment those words were spoken, everyone shuddered in fear. Wang Xiao. Hurry, let's leave here. I want to go home, Li Feifei began crying, clutching Wang Zitong's arm and begging. Wang Zitong suddenly snapped to attention. Right, let's go. He tried to lead the group forward, but when he saw the unfamiliar, empty hospital corridor ahead, he hesitated. Who knew where this corridor might lead? What if it led to the creature's lair? Wang Zitong was under great pressure, like the first person entering a haunted house. But the others saw him as the backbone and all huddled behind him. Luckily, Fang Xiu soon took the lead. After observing the situation, Fang Xiu began moving calmly down the corridor, with Zhao Hao following closely behind. Seeing someone lead the way, Wang Zitong no longer hesitated and followed, though he kept about a 3-meter distance behind them, possibly out of pride or for some other reason. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of rapid, suppressed footsteps echoed in the empty corridor, as though they feared the creature might hear them. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. The person leading the group, Fang Xiu, had stopped moving, and as the leader, Zhao Hao also stopped. Wang Zitong and the others followed suit. Wang Zitong wanted to ask why Fang Xiu had stopped but didn't dare open his mouth. If he asked, it would seem like he wasn't brave enough to move without Fang Xiu. Fang Xiu, why did you stop? Li Feifei's voice trembled with fear. She had already lost all composure, no longer the sharp, professional woman she once was. Seeing Fang Xiu halt, she desperately wanted to leave and subconsciously asked. Fang Xiu didn't answer right away, but after checking his phone, he paused for a moment before speaking. It's time. Time for what? Li Feifei asked reflexively. The others were just as confused. Only Wang Zitong's expression changed drastically. He quickly raised his left hand and looked at his expensive watch. It's been 3 minutes. Everyone's eyes widened in shock as they realized what this meant. Just then, there was a sharp crackling sound behind them. The sound was clear and crisp, like joints cracking. When they turned around, they froze in terror. Hanging from the ceiling was a female doctor in a white coat, her hair disheveled, her limbs elongated like a spider's, and her eyes completely white. She was suspended upside down, with her face turned away from them. As she rotated her head 180 degrees, her face aligned with the group's. An overwhelming sense of terror swept through them. Before the creature appeared, there was an eerie feeling, but when it stood in front of you, even the bravest would feel their hearts race. The female doctor stared fixedly at them, and in the next second, her limbs began to move frantically. Like a spider, she crawled toward them. Ah! Li Feifei's scream seemed to signal the start of their frantic escape. They ran for their lives, no longer caring about who was in front. The hospital corridor was narrow, and in their desperation, they began pulling at each other to escape. Some of the weaker individuals were knocked over in the chaos. For example, Li Feifei. As a delicate woman, she had clung to Wang Zidong for protection. But when the danger arrived, Wang Zidong was the first to shove her down and flee. Wang Zidong was quick to react, sprinting to the front of the group. At that moment, Fang Xiu and Zhao Hao blocked his escape path. But neither of them was running. Zhao Hao had been scared into a stupor, while Fang Xiu was watching closely. Just as he had predicted, the killer was the female doctor they'd encountered earlier in the psychiatric hospital. After all, most of the anomalies at Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital were locked in their rooms. Although some doors had been opened, they hadn't encountered anyone except for the female doctor. She wasn't a patient, but a doctor, which is why she hadn't been confined. Get out of the way. Don't block the path. Wang Zidong shouted angrily as he pushed Zhao Hao aside and ran forward. As for Fang Xiu, he had already positioned himself against the wall when the others started fleeing, avoiding being caught in the chaos. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The colleagues who had once spent their days in the office now resembled athletes, zooming past Fang Xiu with the sound of rushing wind. Poor Zhao Hao, on the other hand, was knocked around several times and fell to the ground. Wait for me. Wang Xiao. Don't leave me behind. Li Feifei, who had just gotten back up, screamed in terror. Her once beautiful face was twisted with fear, and her makeup was smeared with tears. She was now the last one, not only because she had been knocked down but also because she was wearing high heels, stiletto heels, no less. Of course, it might also be because she had been exhausted by something she did earlier. It's worth mentioning that not only did she wear stilettos, but she also wore a form-fitting skirt, tight and sexy. The only drawback was that it was impossible to run in. Those with experience know that once you start running, the skirt will inevitably ride up. Ah! Li Feifei only took a few steps before she cried out in pain and fell to the ground. Her delicate ankle was red and swollen. It was proven that wearing high heels made running difficult and prone to spraining an ankle. Li Feifei didn't even care about the burning pain in her ankle and struggled to get up. But the next second, her vision went dark. Countless long, black, thick strands of hair, like little snakes, blocked her view. It was the hair of the female doctor, hanging down. Li Feifei's body shuddered, her heart stopped, and she instinctively looked up. A pale face met her gaze, with a pair of eyes that only had whites, staring at her unblinkingly. She froze, as if all the strength was drained from her body, unable to move at all. Until the female doctor's hair fell, brushing across Li Feifei's face. The cold, slippery touch jolted her back to reality. Ah! Li Feifei screamed in terror, crawling forward like a reptile. Her smooth, delicate knees scraped the cement floor, leaving blood stains, but she didn't even notice as she was focused on escaping. Help me, she screamed at Fang Xiu and Zhao Hao. They were the only two left in the corridor, the others had long since run to the end and turned the corner. I don't want to. Li Feifei's words were cut off. A flash of silver light passed by. Her vision started to tilt, then spun and fell. Thud. A muffled sound echoed. That was the sound of Li Feifei's head hitting the ground. The female doctor's scalpel was incredibly sharp, and her more than 2-meter-long limbs gave her an extensive attack range. With just a swing of her arm, the scalpel completed the decapitation. It was so fast that Li Feifei's body still maintained a crawling posture on the floor. Her broken, pale neck was smoothly severed, with blood spraying out like a fountain. Some of it even splashed onto Zhao Hao, while Fang Xiu, standing behind him, was unaffected. Zhao Hao, who had just calmed down, was once again stunned. This terrifying, bloody scene didn't make him soil himself, though, since he had already emptied his bladder earlier. The female doctor didn't stop after killing Li Feifei, she continued to dismember the corpse. She did it with meticulous attention to detail, moving precisely and without hesitation. Fang Xiu and Zhao Hao stood by, yet she didn't even glance at them. Once she had finished dismembering, the female doctor pounced on the body like a hungry tiger and began to feast. Fang Xiu had already formed a hypothesis in his mind. He figured out the female doctor's pattern: she killed people one at a time, always targeting just one person. Otherwise, there would be no reason for her to ignore him and Zhao Hao. Her method of killing was dismemberment with a scalpel, followed by eating the victim. This pattern probably had something to do with the female doctor's profession when she was alive. Holding a scalpel and performing precise dissection, the female doctor must have conducted many surgeries in a psychiatric hospital when she was still alive. Any doctor doing surgery typically works on one patient at a time, almost never using two scalpels to perform surgery on two people simultaneously. This is probably why the female doctor always kills only one person and uses the scalpel to dismember them, with such focus and dedication. As for cannibalism, it was likely an instinct after becoming strange. With this understanding, Fang Xiu moved closer to the female doctor and stood by her side. The scene was gruesome, but Fang Xiu remained unfazed. He had experienced such scenes many times before, though in those instances, he had been the one eaten. Suddenly, Fang Xiu clenched his fist and threw a punch at the female doctor. Bang! A dull thud echoed. Fang Xiu withdrew his fist, and blood dripped from his knuckles. He frowned, glanced at his injured hand, then at the female doctor's flawless face. She continued to eat with elegance, seemingly undisturbed by Fang Xiu's impolite behavior. Fang Xiu felt as if his punch had hit steel, and it made him realize the vast difference between himself and the female doctor. It seemed that all the strange beings he had encountered so far possessed a lethality that humans could not resist. Humans were as weak as ants in the face of the strange. Perhaps only by becoming a spirit master could this situation be changed. At that moment, a trembling voice came from behind him. Xiu. Xiu Gu, let's run. It was Zhao Hao. It was clear that Zhao Hao had recovered from his extreme fear. Unlike his colleagues who had fled immediately, he planned to call for Fang Xiu. But Fang Xiu didn't run. Instead, he calmly stood his ground. This strange being only eats one person at a time, which means it's safest when she's eating. But I can see that she's almost done. Li Feifei had a great figure. She wasn't a thin, delicate beauty, though her legs seemed thin, she had more than enough curves where it mattered. So, judging by her body, it should at least last 3 minutes, maybe even 4 minutes. No need to hurry. Fang Xiu spoke these chilling words with a calm tone. Zhao Hao, already on edge, suddenly retched when he heard the words, body mass. There were vegetables, instant noodles, wide noodles, and enoki mushrooms. Clearly, he had eaten hot pot for dinner. Wang Zitong once said that to become a spirit master, you need to let the strange forces infiltrate your mind, and within the entire strange domain, the most concentrated power is naturally around the strange beings. So I plan to stay a bit longer. If you're afraid, you can leave first. After saying this, Fang Xiu no longer paid attention to Zhao Hao. Instead, he reached out to touch the female doctor's spider-like legs, which were over 2 meters long. He wasn't sure how the strange force would infiltrate his mind, but he assumed physical contact would speed up the process. Her legs felt ice cold, like touching a corpse. After vomiting, Zhao Hao was utterly stunned by what he saw. He had always thought he was quite depraved, watching adult films every day, even taking matters into his own hands. But he never expected that Brother Xiu, with his thick eyebrows and big eyes, was even more extreme than him. Daring to take advantage of a creepy opportunity? However, recalling what Fang Xiu had just said, Zhao Hao quickly understood the purpose behind this. Maybe it was the shock of everything, or perhaps Fang Xiu's calmness gave him some confidence. Or maybe every ordinary person has an extraordinary side to them. All these complex thoughts led Zhao Hao to make a bold decision. With a deep breath, he walked toward the female doctor. Seeing him approach, Fang Xiu immediately motioned for him to take his place. Zhao Hao, trembling, reached out his hand, as if trying to touch a venomous snake. Damn it. I'm doing this. Hiss. It's so cold. Zhao Hao inhaled sharply, but didn't pull his hand back. They touched for a while, but nothing changed. Suddenly, Zhao Hao spoke up, I never thought the first time I'd touch a woman's thigh would be on a creepy one. But I'll say this thigh is really long. It's almost longer than my life. Fang Xiu glanced at him in surprise, not because of his bad joke, but because he saw some potential in Zhao Hao. Although he had initially seemed scared, his ability to adapt was strong, and now he was even making jokes. Even if the joke was just to ease the tension, not everyone would dare to joke at such a moment. 1 minute's up. 30 more seconds, then we go. We need enough time to escape, Fang Xiu said decisively. Zhao Hao nodded. Time ticked by, and 30 seconds passed in the blink of an eye. Let's go. Fang Xiu immediately turned and fled, with Zhao Hao following closely behind. Since Fang Xiu was being so bold, he must have had some plan. After all, he had entered Qing Mountain Mental Hospital before. Though he hadn't explored it completely, he had a general sense of the layout and some routes in mind. So, he was confident in using the terrain to create distance between himself and the female doctor. However, just as they reached the corner of the hallway, something terrifying happened. Fang Xiu noticed several strands of black hair falling in front of him. He looked up and met the pale eyes of the female doctor. How could this be? Fang Xiu's heart raced. Did he misjudge the killing pattern? He had at least 2 more minutes to escape. Why was the female doctor already chasing them? He quickly turned back to look at Li Feifei's body, then froze in horror. Li Feifei's corpse had been almost entirely consumed, leaving a blood-soaked mess, with several large chunks of silicone scattered across the pool of blood. Silicone. Fake. Fang Xiu was furious. He never expected to make such a mistake. It was his fault for not having much experience with women, naively thinking all women were real. But the world was full of well-made fakes. Whoosh! A flash of silver passed by, and Fang Xiu's gaze moved upward as his head was violently thrown up and then fell hard to the ground. May there be no silicone in heaven. The cold, slippery sensation was transmitted to Fang Xiu's palm. When he woke up, he was shocked to find that he had not returned to his wife but was instead still beside the female doctor, touching her thigh. At this moment, Zhao Hao came over and started touching as well. Fang Xiu quickly took out his phone to check the time, only to realize that he had rewound to the moment just before touching the thigh. A thought struck him. Could it be that the death reset occurs based on events? Just like the stages of a game, the first stage is near the rental house. The second stage is Qing Mountain Mental Hospital. Since the first stage was completed, the save point must have automatically shifted to the second stage. Fang Xiu didn't have time to think further. He had died due to the silicone last time, so this time he wouldn't make the same mistake. Let's go. Zhao Hao was slightly stunned. Brother Xiu, we're leaving so soon. This is my first time. Before Zhao Hao could finish, Fang Xiu turned and left. Zhao Hao didn't dare stay behind alone and hurried to follow. At that moment, Fang Xiu's voice floated back, her front and back are all silicone, so the flesh doesn't have enough mass to support her for long. Zhao Hao froze for a moment, then exclaimed, silicone. No wonder she's so big. The two of them ran quickly, reaching the end of the hallway, where there was a right turn. Without hesitation, they turned. After just a few steps, a staircase appeared in front of them. Downstairs, Fang Xiu said, and the two of them started running down the stairs. The light on the staircase grew dimmer, and the darkness in the air seemed to float like some kind of solid particles. They ran desperately, passing one floor after another. Soon, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed ahead. Then came the scream of a person. Creepy. The creepy is chasing us. Fang Xiu recognized the voice, it was one of his colleagues. He quickened his pace and jumped down the stairs. When he got close, he saw it was Wang Zitong and his group. Wang Zitong and the others recognized Fang Xiu and breathed a sigh of relief. They clearly thought the creepy had caught up to them. It's Fang Xiu and Zhao Hao. You scared me. I thought the creepy was chasing us, one of his colleagues gasped. Zhao Hao looked at the group in surprise. Why are you guys running so slowly? Slow. We've already gone down 20 floors. You guys, though, how are you running so fast? 20 floors. Zhao Hao's face turned pale. That's impossible. Brother Xiu and I only ran down 3 floors before we met you guys. What? Zhao Hao, stop talking nonsense. Fang Xiu observed the panicking crowd thoughtfully. At that moment, Wang Zitong realized something and looked horrified. The creepy is walling. It must be the creepy walling. My cousin said that the creepy's power can make people hallucinate, which could cause the creepy walling. People who encounter creepy walling keep circling around, unable to escape. That's why Fang Xiu and Zhao Hao caught up with us so quickly, they've been stuck in place. Wang Zitong's words only made the situation worse, causing everyone to panic even more. Does anyone have extra stuff? Throw it on the ground as a marker, Fang Xiu's calm voice cut through the chaos. Wang Zitong immediately realized what Fang Xiu was planning. He quickly took out a cigarette case and threw it on the ground. The others also reacted, throwing items like money and cigarettes onto the floor. Once the markers were set, everyone started running down the stairs again. After descending half a floor, they turned a corner and saw their discarded items on the stairs. This is the lighter I just threw. My money. It's over, it's really creepy walling. What are we going to do? If the creepy catches up, we're done for. Wang Zitong's face darkened as he picked up the grandson's death trap he had just thrown away, realizing it was indeed his usual wolf teeth model. His face grew even darker. Shut up, he shouted, my cousin said that ordinary people can never get past the ghostly wall. To break the deadlock, you need spiritual awareness to see through it. Everyone, check yourselves and see if anyone can activate their spiritual awareness. After finishing his words, he desperately focused his mind, praying to activate his own spiritual awareness. He didn't know if his experience being chased by the ghost counted as surviving a near-death situation, but at this point, all he could do was pray. Fang Xiu didn't pay attention to the others and began feeling along the wall on the right. He never expected others to activate their spiritual awareness and become spiritual masters. Because among them, the one most likely to become a spiritual master was undoubtedly himself. Only he had truly experienced life and death and had been in close contact with the ghosts. If he didn't become a spiritual master, then no one else could, so instead of praying, it was better to search for clues. He began recalling the overall layout of the mental hospital, thinking the exit should be on the right side. He had passed through the staircase earlier, and at that time, the exit had been on the right side. Although he couldn't tell which building of the mental hospital it was, he thought the layout should be the same. Since the ghostly wall was an illusion, he closed his eyes and felt along the right wall as he descended the stairs, knowing there was a good chance he would find a door. Fang Xiu closed his eyes and began feeling the wall as he went downstairs, drawing the attention of the others. After all, everyone else stayed in place, and only Fang Xiu moved away from the group to act alone, which was hard to ignore. Wang Zitong watched Fang Xiu's actions thoughtfully. By now, he had realized that Fang Xiu was somewhat unusual. He was too calm, never showing any panic, even when encountering the ghosts. He recalled the earlier scene when the female doctor appeared. He was the first to react and tried to escape, but what was Fang Xiu doing at that time? Fang Xiu hadn't run, instead, he had pressed himself against the wall to avoid being pushed. He had been at the front, yet he hadn't chosen to flee immediately. Eventually, only Fang Xiu, Zhao Hao, and Li Feifei remained. Now Li Feifei was missing, she must be dead. But Fang Xiu and Zhao Hao had stayed in that corridor for at least a minute. What had they been doing? Why hadn't the ghost killed them? Why didn't they escape? The two men had stayed with the female ghost for a full minute. Were they taking advantage of her? Wang Zitong dismissed this absurd thought. Although he didn't know what the two had done during that minute, one thing was certain. The ghost only killed one person at a time, 3 minutes for a man, 2 minutes for a woman. This time frame was absolutely safe, even if they were close to the ghost. The fact that Fang Xiu and Zhao Hao were still alive was the best proof. At that moment, Fang Xiu had already reached the bottom of the stairs, distancing himself from the group. Wang Zitong saw Fang Xiu go down and seemed to realize something. He imitated Fang Xiu's actions, closing his eyes and feeling the wall as he descended. The others were all drawn to their actions. As Fang Xiu's hand moved along the wall, he felt nothing but rough, solid surfaces. But after reaching the 15th step, the texture under his hand changed. It became smooth and cold, as if he was touching steel. Fang Xiu suddenly opened his eyes. Looking at the bare wall before him, he immediately placed his hands on it, trying to find the doorknob. At this moment, Wang Zitong, who had followed suit, also realized the difference in texture and was elated. It's a door. With a click, Fang Xiu turned the doorknob he had just found, and the door opened. The wall had mysteriously transformed into an iron door, which now creaked open to reveal a dimly lit corridor. Whoosh! Wang Zitong, like a madman, was the first to charge inside. Fang Xiu didn't say anything, walking into the door without a word. The others, seeing the exit, ran in as well, frantic. The group began to flee down the corridor. Though Fang Xiu had been the second to enter, he found himself at the second-to-last position. It wasn't that he was slow, but there was no need to rush. When facing the female doctor, you didn't need to run faster than her. You only needed to outrun the last person, and this way, you could even take advantage of the situation by touching her leg more, trying to activate spiritual awareness sooner. Also, sometimes, being at the front wasn't necessarily a good thing. Fang Xiu knew well that the mental hospital wasn't just haunted by the female doctor, although most of the ghosts were locked in the rooms. Don't forget, the doors to those rooms were open. As they ran, Wang Zitong, who had been leading, suddenly stopped, followed by the others who also came to a halt. Before them appeared two dark, narrow paths. Both were so dim that visibility was less than 1 meter, and no one could see what lay ahead. No one dared to walk either path. If they picked the wrong one, wouldn't they be trapped by the female doctor? At this point, everyone's gaze turned to Fang Xiu, who had just caught up to the group. Since Fang Xiu had found a way through the ghostly wall earlier, they naturally believed he might find a way through the current deadlock as well. Unfortunately, Fang Xiu wasn't sure which path to take either. He hadn't explored the entire mental hospital but had been drifting like a ghost, passing through the walls, learning the general layout and the paths he'd taken. Unfortunately, neither of these two paths was within his knowledge. Fang Xiu, which path should we take? Wang Zitong asked quickly. Seeing the expectant looks from everyone, Fang Xiu couldn't help but laugh. When they were escaping, they had tried to push him aside, but now that they were in trouble, they turned to him for answers. Wasn't this just like using him as a tool? But Fang Xiu didn't care, as he also saw everyone as tools. Right now, when facing the female doctor, these people were invincible. To buy time, the only option was to sacrifice their lives. Fang Xiu didn't speak, simply choosing the path on the right. Even though he didn't know which path was correct, he knew there was no time to waste. Every moment now was a life-or-death gamble. Seeing Fang Xiu choose the right path, without any hesitation, everyone followed suit and ran in that direction. At that moment, the sound of creaking joints filled the air. The group turned around and saw the female doctor, resembling a spider, hanging upside down from the ceiling. Her ghostly pale eyes fixed on them, and her white coat stood out in the dark corridor. Ah! Run! Don't block the way. The crowd panicked, running for their lives. But no one could run faster than the female doctor. 2 legs couldn't compare to her 4. In the blink of an eye, the eerie figure of the female doctor appeared above them, her long black hair falling, heading straight for the last person in the group. The last person was manager Wu Dahai. He was the oldest and also the fattest among them, middle-aged and out of shape, so his physical abilities were naturally lacking. But whether it was intentional or not, Wu Dahai, in his panic, grabbed the person in front of him and yanked him backward, using the force to propel himself forward. The person who was pulled stumbled and almost fell, becoming the last in line. Swish! A flash of silver light. The person pulled by Wu Dahai was decapitated before he could even scream. When Fang Xiu saw this, he immediately stopped, touched his thighs, and then resumed running, unfazed by falling behind. His youth and frequent exercise had him in peak condition. He didn't know how to quickly activate his spiritual energy, so he could only try things that might not even work. The corridor on the right was long, and it took a full minute for everyone to reach the end, which opened up to a large dining hall. The dining hall was spacious, empty, and filled with old tables and chairs, with stoves and large black pots in the corners. Wang Jiding was thrilled. Dining halls usually have exits leading outside. Everyone became excited, ignoring the environment, scanning the room. They quickly spotted a door on the far left side of the hall and rushed toward it. Fang Xiu kept his position as second to last, calmly running while glancing around. Inside the door was another dim, narrow corridor, even darker than the previous one. The lights on the ceiling seemed as if they might flicker out at any moment. No one paid attention to the environment. They just wanted to escape as soon as possible. The group quickly reached the end of the corridor, where Wang Jiding's face turned grim, no way out. It turned out that the end of the corridor was a dead end. This didn't make sense. Wang Jiding thought that in a place like a dining hall, which would have many people, there should be escape routes or connections to the outside world. How could it be a dead end? Was the entire hospital sealed off to prevent anyone from escaping? Look! There's a door, one of the colleagues exclaimed. At the far right of the corridor was a narrow wooden door, too small for more than one person to pass through. The paint was chipped, and there was a small glass window. Seeing the door, everyone didn't hesitate. They threw it open and rushed inside, not caring what might be there. The danger outside was more terrifying. Luckily, the room behind the door wasn't as dangerous. It was a small storage room, filled with brooms, mops, and old furniture. With 5 of them crowded in, there was hardly anywhere to stand. Damn it! This is a storage room. There's no way out. Wang Jiding cursed. The others looked defeated. A dead end. They were trapped like fish in a jar by a strange force. Had they made the wrong choice? Fang Xiu calmly thought, maybe next time he should take the left side instead. He wasn't panicking, after all, this was just an experiment. He decided to go back and take the left path. It was too late to go back now, though. 2 minutes had passed, and there was only 1 minute left before the female doctor would make her next move. If they turned back now, they'd be walking right into her. Though one could sacrifice someone to help the others escape, Fang Xiu didn't think it was worthwhile. Including himself, only 5 people remained, and no one knew how far they still had to run or how many lives would be lost along the way. Just as Fang Xiu prepared to exit and seek the female doctor's death reset, Wang Jiding's angry voice rang out, "It's all your fault, Fang Xiu. If you hadn't chosen the wrong path, we wouldn't be trapped here. Fang Xiu. If you didn't know which way to go, why didn't you discuss it with the rest of us? Why make your own decision to go right?" Wu Dahai angrily echoed. Another person, besides Zhao Hao, didn't voice it, but their eyes betrayed some blame. Fang Xiu's lips curled into a restrained smile. He didn't smile often, except when facing something bizarre and extremely thrilling. But for some reason, at this moment, facing Wang Zhideng and the others, he wanted to laugh. Zhao Hao stepped forward, fiercely retorting, Fang Xiu didn't force you to come. You chose to come with us. We asked him for directions, and now you blame him for making the wrong choice. If you were so capable, why didn't you choose for yourselves? We may not be capable, but at least we didn't do what he did, making decisions on our own. If we didn't know, we could have discussed it with everyone. We trusted him to choose, and look at what happened. He betrayed our trust and trapped us in a dead end. Wu Dehai, being the manager, had a way with words. His argument easily shut down Zhao Hao. Enough, stop arguing, Wang Zhideng shouted, his voice harsh. The priority now is figuring out how to survive. I've observed that this strange force only attacks one person at a time, and after an attack, there's a 2 to 3 minute window of safety. The only way now is to select someone to lure the force away so the rest of us can escape. When Wang Zhideng said this, the atmosphere immediately grew tense. Anyone could tell that this wasn't about leading the force away, it was about sending someone to their death, using their life to save others. Wang Zhideng had been building up to this moment. His sudden accusation toward Fang Xiu was a setup for now. With everyone blaming Fang Xiu, the one chosen to sacrifice would clearly be him. Wang Zhideng knew this was his only choice. In such chaotic times, people would tend to follow the crowd and not think too deeply. If someone had said that Wang Zhideng, the rich heir, should be the one to die, he knew that would mean certain death. As the atmosphere grew more bizarre, Wang Zhideng made a surprising move, he suddenly shoved Fang Xiu. He shouted, if it weren't for Fang Xiu, we wouldn't be in this mess, so he must atone. Someone, help me. The others exchanged glances. While they didn't want to die, the idea of condemning someone else to death in order to survive left them uneasy and hesitant. Let go of Fang Xiu. Zhao Hao yelled, rushing toward Wang Zhideng. Wang Zhideng was startled and quickly shouted, Wu Dehai, why aren't you helping? Upon receiving the signal, Wu Dehan immediately responded, as he always followed Wang Zhideng's lead. Bang! Wu Dehan's bulky body slammed into Zhao Hao, knocking him to the ground. Then, he teamed up with Wang Zhideng to shove Fang Xiu out of the room, slamming the utility room door shut behind him. At that moment, the two sides were like two different worlds. Outside the door, Fang Xiu stood alone. Inside, his colleagues were visible through the small window in the door. Fang Xiu could clearly see each of their expressions. Zhao Hao seemed to have hit some chairs when he fell and was now screaming in pain on the ground. Wang Zhideng and Wu Dehan stood together, grimacing as they held the door shut. The last remaining person lowered their head, too afraid to look at the window. Inside, Wang Zhideng shouted to Wu Dehan, hold the door tight, don't let Fang Xiu in. Don't worry, Wang Xiao. This flimsy wooden door may not stop the creature, but it'll hold back a person just fine, Wu Dehan replied. However, after a while of holding the door, they realized that there was no force coming from outside. No sounds of banging or kicking at the door either. They exchanged an odd glance before lifting their heads and looking toward the small window. On the other side, a pale face with a smile was pressed against the window, calmly staring at them. A chill ran down their spines. I thought I wouldn't be interested in people anymore, but sometimes, people are much more interesting than those creatures. Ha ha ha. Thank you for rekindling my interest in this world. Next time, I'll repay you properly. Fang Xiu's voice drifted through the old wooden door, his strange words leaving them puzzled, but the eerie undertone sent a wave of foreboding through them. Suddenly, a clicking sound rang out. The female doctor had arrived. The familiar noise, like the Grim Reaper's calling, made Wang Zhideng and the others inside the utility room hold their breath, afraid to even make a sound, lest they attract the creature's attention. Though they knew the female doctor's killing pattern, they couldn't help but instinctively fear when she appeared. Fang Xiu also heard the sound but didn't turn his head. He just smiled, watching Wang Zhideng and the others, as though memorizing their faces. The next moment. Swish! A flash of silver, and Fang Xiu's head hit the ground with a thud. Now's our chance. Run! Wang Zhideng shouted, throwing open the door and sprinting out. As he ran, he instinctively glanced back at Fang Xiu's head. He saw that the face still held a smile, with calm eyes staring quietly at him. Wang Zhideng felt as though his heart almost stopped. Without looking back, he fled the scene. The cold, slippery sensation came from Fang Xiu's palm. A long, pale thigh appeared before him. He's back, Fang Xiu muttered, a strange smile curling at the corner of his lips. The smile flickered and vanished so quickly that even Zhao Hao, standing nearby, didn't see it. Having just returned from death, Fang Xiu didn't act any differently. He replayed the same actions as before, as if caught in a TV show rerun, touching the thigh, running, and descending the stairs. The dim lights on the stairs barely illuminated the dark, particulate-like shadow that seemed to float in the air. Fang Xiu led Zhao Hao as they ran down the stairs, 1 floor, 2 floors, 3 floors. Before long, they heard the sound of hurried footsteps ahead. Then came a person's scream. Creature! The creature's after us! As before, Fang Xiu leapt down the stairs to the next floor, landing in front of Wang Zidong and the others. It's Fang Xiu and Zhao Hao. You scared me, I thought it was the creature, one of their colleagues gasped. Zhao Hao looked at them in surprise. Why are you running so slowly? Slow. We've descended at least 20 floors. How about you two? How are you running so fast? The conversation continued, just like before. The creature's banging on the wall. It must be the creature banging on the wall. Wang Zidong started to explain about the creature, but before he could finish, a loud bang echoed. The door opened. And there stood Fang Xiu, quietly standing in front of it. Wang Zidong froze, and the others were stunned. Wasn't there supposed to be a creature banging on the wall? How did they suddenly find the exit? But they didn't think much of it and rushed towards the door. The group soon arrived at a fork in the road and stopped. Fang Xiu, did you awaken your spirit? Wang Zidong asked, his expression complicated. As soon as the words were out, everyone's attention turned to Fang Xiu. They had heard Wang Zidong say before that only spirit masters could combat the creatures, and only by awakening their spirit could one become a spirit master. Now that Wang Zidong had asked Fang Xiu this, their hope for survival surged. It was no wonder Wang Zidong asked, as this time, Fang Xiu had cracked the creature's wall differently. Last time, he was just fumbling around, but this time, he went straight to the door and opened it. So Wang Zidong mistakenly thought Fang Xiu had sensed the door's location through his spirit. Facing everyone's eager and complex gazes, Fang Xiu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took out his phone and checked the time. Then he looked up and said, 1 minute. The creature will appear in 1 minute. Everyone was immediately alarmed. You even know the exact time the creature will appear. It seems you really have become a spirit master. Fang Xiu, if you can lead us out of the creature's domain, 5 million. I'll give you 5 million. Wang Zidong said urgently. Fang Xiu, please take us out of here. You must know which path to take, right? As long as you lead us out, we'll repay you. But at that moment, Fang Xiu shook his head and calmly said, no rush. His words left the others feeling frantic. Before we leave, I have one thing to do. Wu Dehan nearly exploded in anger. What's more important than escaping? Ah! A blood-curdling scream cut off Wu Dehan's words. Everyone froze, staring at Fang Xiu, who had just retracted his foot, and at Wang Zidong, still curled on the ground in a shrimp-like position. Wang Zidong's face was contorted in pain, turning red, veins bulging, trembling uncontrollably, and a series of agonizing screams poured from his mouth. The group seemed to hear the sound of eggshells cracking in the air. Ah. Wang Zidong couldn't even form a coherent sentence. Wu Dehan, as Wang Zidong's sycophant, quickly reacted, furiously questioning Fang Xiu. Fang Xiu. What are you doing? Why did you suddenly kick him? The others echoed in agreement. Yeah, what was that for? No one expected Fang Xiu to suddenly attack, especially with such force. Even Wang Zidong hadn't seen it coming. He would probably never understand why, after mentioning 5 million, he got kicked. Was it because the money wasn't enough? If it wasn't, why not just say so? At that moment, Fang Xiu explained. He calmly said, the creature's speed far exceeds that of humans. So when the minute is up, someone will inevitably die. Now that Wang Zidong is immobile, he'll be the one to die. So, I'm saving you. Saving us. Everyone was stunned, unable to understand why Fang Xiu would kick someone to save them. Fang Xiu didn't give them time to react before kicking again. The next moment, another agonizing scream rang out. This time, it was Wu Dehan who fell. His posture was identical to Wang Zidong's, clutching his groin and wailing in pain, his screams relentless. However, Wu Dehan's pain tolerance was clearly lower than Wang Zidong's, and after just a few screams, he fainted. Everyone knew the groin was the most vulnerable part of a man, and Fang Xiu had kicked without holding back. The damage was thorough. So now, Wang Zidong and Wu Dehan were both unable to move for the time being. The group was in complete chaos. No one had expected Fang Xiu to suddenly attack twice, seriously injuring both Wang Zidong and Wu Dehan. Xiuji, what is going on? Zhao Hao instinctively took a few steps back from Fang Xiu, his hand subconsciously covering his groin. The others looked at Fang Xiu with a mix of wariness and doubt. Fang Xiu, what are you really up to? You attacked Wang Zidong to save us, but what about Wu Dehan? One colleague angrily questioned. No one wanted to stay with someone who could suddenly attack without warning, especially with such brutal force, causing permanent harm. Fang Xiu remained unbothered by the questioning, his expression unchanged, and calmly responded, keeping one as a backup. Spare. The group stared at Fang Xiu's calm expression, a storm of emotions rising within them. His actions were so brutal and unexpected that they were left shocked and stunned. Indeed, no one wanted to die, and when faced with a life-or-death choice, one must make a decision. But Fang Xiu gave no room for discussion or choice, he struck without hesitation. It wasn't just one person he injured, he was leaving a backup, completely overturning the group's understanding of what was happening. They were now highly cautious of him, fearing he might create another backup. However, Fang Xiu did not strike again. The path to the right is a dead end. If you want to live, go left. The group eyed Fang Xiu warily, no longer trusting him. One of them asked, since the safe path is to the left, why aren't you going? I'm waiting to grope some thighs. Grope? Thighs? The other two, aside from Zhao Hao, thought they had misheard. Where could one grope a thigh in this eerie place? The eerie thigh, perhaps. At that moment, the sound of joints cracking echoed. The female doctor descended from the ceiling, her limbs making eerie noises as she crawled. Her pale lips were still stained with fresh blood, dripping steadily down. Ah! The two screamed in panic, about to run, but hesitated, unsure whether Fang Xiu was tricking them. They only ran slightly into the left corridor, too afraid to go deeper. Meanwhile, Fang Xiu did not run, instead, he moved toward the female doctor. Of course, he stopped just short of Wang Zidong. Wang Zidong glared at Fang Xiu, a mix of hatred and rage in his eyes. He reached out, seemingly willing to do anything to grab Fang Xiu's pants and drag him down with him. Bang! Fang Xiu stomped down, crushing Wang Zidong's hand underfoot. Ah! You! The intense pain drove Wang Zidong mad, his rage consuming him to the point of losing all reason. Fang Xiu slowly leaned forward, the shadow cast by his head covering his face. His expression changed. It became grotesque, frenzied, even with a trace of intoxication. A mad, twisted grin spread across his face, revealing his white teeth. Do you like my repayment? No. As Wang Zidong let out his final scream, Fang Xiu's expression reached its peak of madness. Xing! A flash of silver. Wang Zidong's head was severed, his eyes wide with terror and deep-seated hatred, unable to die in peace. This is the taste of revenge. Truly intoxicating. Fang Xiu's body trembled uncontrollably. It was his first time tasting the fruit of revenge, and he was unable to contain his excitement. Wang Zidong's blood splattered onto his face. The warmth made Fang Xiu feel the thumping of his own heart. He couldn't help but imagine, if one day his wife died at his hands, how wonderful that would be. Quickly, Fang Xiu's expression returned to calm, as though nothing had happened. He then walked to the female doctor and began to grope her thigh. The remaining group members were completely stunned. Even though they had witnessed it firsthand, they couldn't believe it. Fang Xiu's groping the thigh was, in fact, touching the eerie thigh. At that moment, Fang Xiu turned back and looked at Zhao Hao. Join me? Fang Xiu hadn't forgotten what Zhao Hao had done in the storeroom earlier. While he didn't feel any gratitude, he still hoped to help Zhao Hao more. He felt his emotions were waning, or perhaps his humanity was gradually fading. His heart was full of hatred and madness, and though he didn't mind this feeling, he also didn't want to lose all of his human emotions. Zhao Hao hesitated, unsure, as Fang Xiu's current appearance was terrifying. His calm face was covered in blood, his pale skin contrasting with the crimson blood, creating an eerie beauty. Lying at his feet was Wang Zidong's dismembered body, and standing beside the eerie doctor, it was hard to tell who was truly the monster. Zhao Hao hesitated but finally chose to trust Fang Xiu. He had few friends, and maybe the only real one was Fang Xiu. Coming from an ordinary family, Zhao Hao had always been a marginal figure. Only Fang Xiu, an orphan like him, had befriended him, and over time, they had become good friends. Slowly, Zhao Hao walked over to Fang Xiu's side, and the two began to grope the eerie thigh together. As for the other two, they had already fled. They weren't scared off by the eerie creature, but when they saw Fang Xiu turn around, they were terrified. Brother Xiu, Zhao Hao asked after some hesitation, why did you suddenly attack Wang Zidong and Wu Dehai? The eerie creature's speed far exceeds that of a human, so if we want to survive, we must trade lives for time. Someone has to sacrifice. Given Wang Zitong and Wu Dehai's status, when it comes down to a choice, who do you think they'd pick? Me, who has a conflict with them, or you, who has always been overlooked? Zhao Hao's face turned pale, and he was about to speak when Fang Xiu added, do you feel a coldness creeping into your body? Zhao Hao froze, then shook his head. Fang Xiu's heart stirred, and he began to sense carefully. It wasn't an illusion. There was indeed a strange coldness flowing from the female doctor's thigh into his palm, spreading throughout his body. Could this be the corruption of eerie power? Why hadn't he felt it before when touching the thigh? No, maybe he had felt it before, but it was too faint. Now, it was growing stronger, likely reaching a critical point. If his guess was correct, this might be the beginning of unlocking his spirituality. Zhao Hao didn't feel anything because he had yet to experience true life-or-death situations. His mindset wasn't prepared. After a moment, Zhao Hao suggested, Brother Xiu, it's about time. We should go. No hurry, we still have Wu Dehai. I feel like my spirituality is about to unlock. Zhao Hao was immediately thrilled. Really, Brother Xiu? That's great. But what does unlocking spirituality feel like? I don't feel anything. You've been in contact with the eerie for a long time, but your mindset isn't up to par, and you haven't truly faced life or death, so you can't feel it. Zhao Hao wanted to ask when Fang Xiu had experienced life or death, but stopped himself. Fang Xiu continued, then pulled Zhao Hao back. They waited until the female doctor dismembered Wu Dehai, before resuming their thigh groping. Wu Dehai was large, and his fat would easily last 5 minutes. Fang Xiu decided to wait for 2 more minutes, leaving 3 minutes to escape. If his spirituality wasn't unlocked in 2 minutes, they would have to leave. Closing his eyes, Fang Xiu moved his hand absent-mindedly, feeling it carefully.